Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Diggy, it's saying it's being live streamed.
Yeah,
Is
something's
something.
happening. I'll just put the names in after.
Yeah. This is only my second live stream I've
Yeah,
done.
there we go.
I know I'm not too good at live streams
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes.
we're live. We're live. We're live and direct, my beloveds. All right, all right, all right. Vinny B, what are you
Okay, yeah.
saying, man? You good?
Yeah. Okay, and I see it. Millennial Kingdom discussion live. All right. Um, Tony still isn't here yet. Uh, and I guess my friend Matt, but yeah, so I guess we'll start the show. Uh, recently I was on this guy Tony's channel called was it Bridgewater Triangle Explorer. Had a great time getting into the Millennial Kingdom short season. I had like 28 people email me for the Flamenco books. Met a lot of people, a lot of new subs, and I it got me motivated to wanting to do more for this community. And I thought of my favorite people, Ricardo from Contend for the Faith channel. Uh, been on his channel 2 times. Uh, he's been doing it for a while. Invited Tony on. Hopefully he'll be on soon. My friend Matt, and then the OG to me, the original gangster of this, and probably like done the most work in my opinion, especially into the old books and stuff, is Noel Hadley from the Unexpected Cosmology. So, and then I wanted to do a live stream so a lot of this community could be in a chat together with each other, having fun, asking questions, and yeah, so that's how we kind of came up with this show. Mice Diggy, this is my man. We've been working together for years from the UK, rapper, researcher, just a cool guy. And he found me on the Killer Priest podcast, invited me on his show. He had a podcast. And he was actually the first person I was openly talking about the Millennial Kingdom, probably what, like 3, 4 years ago, uh, with Diggy. And if people see my videos with the flamenco interviews, my Diggy was a part of that. So if anybody wants to get into timeline deception and stuff like that, Diggy already knows about that. But
Yeah, but
yeah,
this, Vinny, this is next level though, where we're going. Because you've talked about the Millennial Kingdom a lot, like planted little seeds here and there, like you do, but never gone fully into it. And I've
yeah,
always wanted to ask you, but the sort of storyline of the show has never really been about that. But now, and I'm sure a lot of people who are going to tune in will be very interested into finding out exactly what do you guys mean by we're in the Millennial Kingdom. Things
yeah,
you're saying things have already happened, but people think these things are going to happen. Like, what are these things and why? If we can
yeah,
start up there.
yeah. So real quick, most Christians believe in sort of like a futurism where it's 2,000 years have gone by and we're waiting, for the third temple, for certain things to happen. And, everybody thinks Jesus is about to come back. And we believe that Jesus did come back and what he was talking about happened already back in his time while he was talking to those people. We believe that he came back and then set up a thing called the Millennial Kingdom, where it talks about for 1,000 years him setting up this kingdom. And then in Revelation, it goes to after this millennial kingdom, there's basically a short season where the devil is let loose to deceive the world and wage war with the camp of the saints. And what we're saying is we believe we're in that short season. Um, so, this is, I guess, controversial for for a lot of Christians and people, but a lot of us, it's just, and you know me for years into this, there's nothing that got me that stopped believing in this. There's some things that I question, I'm still open to, don't have all the answers, but I think this makes a lot more sense than we're waiting 2,000 years for a prophecy to be fulfilled. And we'll get deep into this. Giving a lot of credit to Noel Hadley, I feel like he's kind of going to be like the man of this probably because I feel like he's done the most work and probably has a lot of the great information to share. And probably me, Ricardo, and Tony, and I know Matt, we're probably going to be taking a step back to hear hear Noel what he has to say probably first. But before we let Noel take over, Ricardo's on. Ricardo, if you want to talk about anything and also your channel for people who might not know you. Boom, here's Tony. Nice.
What's
Hey
up,
guys,
Tony?
welcome.
So
Hi,
yeah, hold on,
Ricardo.
Tony. We're just gonna have Ricardo for people who might not know him, if you want to mention your channel and a little bit of like an intro like I just did.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my name's Ricardo, and my YouTube channel is called Contend for the Faith. And over there, I just been really digging into a lot of the old history of the old world and all of that. And I just think that a lot of our history, like you said, Vinny, has just been messed up and it's been twisted, and it's like a hijacking happened. And I think it's the biggest deception. It's the bottom of the rabbit hole for anyone that is curious. And what I found is that even when we got all the way down to the bottom of the rabbit hole, I still found Jesus down there. And it all just leads back to him. You know what I'm saying? He's the way, the truth, and the life. And and in this season that we think that we're in, it's just proving that Satan, or the devil, the father of lies, it says that basically he cannot speak the truth. And then you just kind of realize everything that we've been indoctrinated to believe has just all been lies, just whether it be the ground that we walk on. We've been taught that we are floating in billions of light years of empty space on a spinning water ball, and God is nowhere to be found, kind of thing. And we've just been lied to about so much once you dig into all of it. And I just do a lot of that in my channel. And and I just think that this is the biggest story that needs to be told right now.
Well said. Well said. And okay, we got Tony here too. Tony, I want to let you give a little introduction for people who might not know you. Let them know your channel and how you got into this maybe.
Sure. Thank you, Vinny, and thank you for having me on, guys. It's an honor to be with all of you. A lot of talent here. I started out searching for Bigfoot, and I was an atheist, and now I'm a Christian and I'm searching for Jesus. And like Ricardo said, it's all about dismantling just the generations of lies, right? We're here to help people. We're here to bring people through the lies and try to show them the truth, because it's really about saving souls. What we're doing, it's much bigger than ourselves. It's much bigger than our channels. We are trying to save souls, and the way to do that is to show people the truth that Jesus is real, the Bible is real, and really that's what it's all about. So I'm just I try to remain humble, and at the same time try to make videos that are entertaining so that people will stick around for the message, which is, hey guys, Jesus is real and he's the only way out of this mess of this world that we live in. That's pretty
Well
much it.
said, Tony. And Tony, you have I want to thank you again for letting me on your show. You might be new to this movement, but I feel like you're doing great work and the people love you and your channel. I'm amazed by the feedback I got and all the emails. It's sort of what motivated me to do this show and have all of you on. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for coming on. I'm sure you'll have questions uh, during the show to ask, and feel free. Um, Now I'm going to give I guess, a shout out to my friend Matt Whalen, who's been, my best friend for 10 years, listening to me talk about crazy stuff. And he's been helping me a lot with the Millennial Kingdom for years. And me and him are big fans of Noel Hadley. I know Matt constantly talking about, hey, did you see Noel Hadley, this book he was talking about? And um, so I felt like since I'm having Noel on, Matt's done even more of me looking into these old books that, Tony, I seen you just did a good show with the guy Adam talking about the saints in these old books. So we're trying to add to that. I wanted to bring on the OG Noel and my friend Matt, who will probably have better questions than even me or add to any of this. So thank you, Matt, for being on. And I guess I should now like kind of give the floor to Noel and let Noel, uh, you give a little introduction, let people know about your channel, how long you've been doing this, and then maybe we could get into some topics.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for having me on, Vinny. That was very kind of you, and it's nice to meet you, Ricardo, Tony, and it's Matt, right? Mize Diggy. But yeah, it's nice to meet you all, and thank you for having me on. So my name is Noel Joshua Hadley. I'm with the Unexpected Cosmology. Of course, we're not just a YouTube channel. We are a ministry community. We're a online digital magazine, a website, a sometimes physical magazine. We are a book publisher, publishers of fiction, nonfiction, and recently Rakia, which is poetry for all you poets out there, if you want to submit your poetry to us. But our main objective, we do many things, but our main objective is to, right now, is to be the first time in official history, 2,000 years, to have a Paleo-Hebrew Bible out. This is like a 10 to 15-year project. We've been actively working on it. This is the hill I'm dying on. This is my life goal, to see the Paleo-Hebrew scriptures finally come out. This is, if anybody doesn't know, the Paleo-Hebrew is the original language of the Bible. So this is what King David spoke in. It's what Abraham spoke in. They all spoke Paleo. So quickly say about the Millennial Kingdom is I was first introduced to the concept of the mud flood Tartaria back at the Flat Earth International Conference in 2019. I had just I was living with my family in Europe. We were going all over looking at stuff. And I'm at the Flat Earth Conference in Dallas with my buddy, Rick Hummer. And if anyone doesn't know Rick Hummer, he was the one that did the Chicago is not a mirage experiment with Rob Skiba back in the day. And he's standing there and he's like starting to tell me like, hey, have you like looked into like all these basements with doors? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, there's all these basements all over the world with doors, and that, like, this makes no sense to me. I'm like, okay, dude, I'll look into the basements with doors or whatever this conspiracy is. And it snowballed from there. And I started, looking into the world fairs back in early 2020. COVID's coming on thick. Hopefully I could say that right now. And it snowballed into, I remember I had the thought, like, I was like, oh, like, I remember I was on a phone call with somebody and we were talking about this, and he's like, dude, man, Tartaria is, back in 2019, people were like, it was really starting to take off among some of the cool kids talking about Tartaria and the mud flood. And he's like, dude, it was this kingdom of peace. And I was like, that's impossible. I was like, that's impossible because there's only one worldwide kingdom of peace, and that's the Millennial Kingdom. And we like both gasped at the same time, yeah, I started looking into it at that time and started putting it out there. At first, I looked around, I didn't know another living soul that was talking about it. Maybe there were, I don't know. And I'm thinking I'm going to get like, stoned for this or something. Like, people are just going to come at me really strong over this. And, I start like, kind of like with a squeaky voice almost, putting it out there, like, what do you guys think about this? And everyone is like listening, going, that sounds about right. I'm like, really? And I was really surprised, and it just went from there. So that's maybe good introduction. I will say this too, that I because, and maybe I'll talk more about that tonight. I don't really know what the general conversation is on the Millennial Kingdom, Tartaria. I do not follow other channels. I just do explicitly my own research. And the way I do my research, I'll get back to that really quickly in a second. The way I do my research is chapter and verse, in terms of, I like many extra biblical books. I like canon. There are at least over 100 different probably extra biblical books that I look at. And so the way the school of Tuck works, and so the Millennial Kingdom is just one subject of many I might look at, everything from serpency to the feminine Holy Spirit to Mary Magdalene, to just, you go down this list. The earth is a womb, pre-existence, whatever. You just fill in the blank. Flat earth. And I might go, okay, like, let's say, what is the firmament, right? The Hebrew word is rakia. So what is the rakia? Well, let's take 30 different books from the ancients and I'll put them together and see if they have a complete picture. It does. It actually does, right? And so that's how I form my reality by taking as much source material as I can. And I don't like using my imagination on this. I don't like just I don't know, conjecture or whatever. I like seeing the source material, what are they saying this looks like, and that's how I've formed my worldview. So yeah, and I just spent the last year actually. I got back from Europe recently. Of course, my Diggy, you're in London. I was in London for a little bit, but went all over, all the way from the UK through Portugal, Spain, all the way over to Poland, the Czech Republic, through Germany and Austria and Italy. Went all over just looking at these buildings, going up to them, investigating, going to cemeteries, investigating them. It was months on end investigation. And at the other end, I had a very because I don't like internet research. I don't trust internet research. I find it to be deceptive. And when you go and see these places in person, you kind of get a different perspective than what is even being advertised by some of the MK or Tartaria crowd. And I came away with some very different perspectives about it. But maybe I could talk about that tonight. But anyways, that's my introduction. Back to you, Vinny. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I really appreciate it. I know you don't like going on other people's platforms. You're always just working. I mean, it's funny how, a
Oh no,
private thing between
I
me and
love
him.
going. Oh yeah, I was going
Right.
to tell you that I love going on other people's. I just I don't get invited. So you invited me. I'm like, hey, I'm happy to come on. So
And you said you were reading something, you were writing about the mafia, and then all of a sudden Vinny calls your phone. So it's sort of like a sign, right? To, to
yeah,
come do it.
I'm writing right now. This is neither here nor there to this conversation, but I'm writing Hunter Tylo's biography right now. If anyone knows her, if anyone watched daytime TV in the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, she's a big advocate of the MK. By the way, she's one of my biggest advocates.
Oh wow.
And she's left Hollywood, and yeah. So I was writing about her time with the Gambino family, which is one of the five crime families in America. At one time, they were the biggest crime family in America. They were running the trash truck. They were running the trash truck industry in New York City, where they could put drugs, bodies, all sorts of stuff in it when she was there. And so I'm literally writing this down about John Gotti and the Gambinos. And then you call me up. I'm like, because like this is Vinny, and he had that thick Italian accent. And I'm like, they're coming for me. They're
You
on to
make an
it.
offer you can't refuse. You gotta come on. But yeah, man, the work you did into these old books. So recently, I was on Tony's channel, and so many people were blown away by, and I seen comments about the book He Walked the Americas. And, to me, knowing that you put that out years ago, it's almost like I forgot to mention it. But I saw so many people like, because again, there's new people coming to this every day, because this is getting bigger and bigger. It doesn't matter what anyone says, this is getting bigger and bigger, this community. So, I would love for you to maybe start with He Walked the Americas for the audience that is new to this topic. Can you get into a little bit about that book and what it's saying?
Yeah, and by the way, this was not planned as a sales pitch at all. I was out of stock of that book for a year, and I literally got it in the mail this week, and you called me about it. So like that was like not planned. So we do sell that in our stores. It's back in stock, everybody. He Walked Americas, but He Walked Americas documents. How do you pronounce it? Quetzalcoatl. It's fun. People just
Quetzalcoatl's.
there you go.
Yeah.
You know what? People come to my channel and just make fun of how at the Tower of Babel, at the distribution of tongues, I got the California tongue. I can't pronounce anything correctly. Um, if I could retire for the rest of my life in France, and I love France, as snooty as they are, they're the most snootiest, rudest culture on earth. But if they put a gun to my yeah. But if they put a gun to my head and told me to say bonjour, correctly, I'm dead, right? But anyways, um, he's also known as the White Prophet. I was about to say the White Wizard, but that would be Lord of the Rings. But the White Prophet, and apparently he arrived on these with a whole entourage on three different ships. Which you have to ask the question: who are these people that he came with? And he went all through South America, Mexico, into North America, going as far as I think the East Coast.
No,
going
that's
all the
funny
way
you
through.
say the three ships. Reminds me of the story we're told about Columbus. Three ships named after saints. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk, but I actually feel Christopher Columbus is actually ties in to Jesus being in America. You take the name Christopher, you put Christ of, and then you break down the word Columbus. Columbia in Latin translates to dove, which is a symbol for Holy Spirit. So it's something I've been going over that was this like actually, you're talking about Christ in this book on three ships, and I point out Columbus on three ships named after saints, people cleaning his feet with their hair, like Mary Magdalene did for Jesus. I
Sure.
feel like, maybe this could tie together too, that Columbus wasn't some evil white European who was enslaving people, that it was actually Jesus. But it's funny how you say it starts off with him on three boats. But sorry to cut you off. You
No, that's okay. No, this conversation. Yeah, I can only. It's been a couple years since I went through that book, and of course, I should go through it again on YouTube. But he arrived with an entourage. We're never really told who these people are. He went around, telling about the Father spirits, performing miracles, unifying the people there, ending the idols and the pagan worship. Eventually, after a couple years or something, I'm not sure how long he was here, and nobody really knows. I guess that'd be conjecture. He gets up and leaves again. He sails off to another part of the realm. The idea is that he would have come from the author who is doing all of her research on the indigenous cultures of America is not focusing on anything in Asia, but the idea that is put forward was that he first came through Japan, China, that whole area there, and witnessed to them. Those stories aren't written down. Um, One of the things I will say this too, that one of the interesting things about the book is that the 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 Aztec and the Mayan and those groups of people all claim that they came from a lost continent that sunk down. And, you can kind of take this how you will, but it seems to tie in, of course, to Atlantis research and so on and so forth. Lemuria, Meru, Mu, all that. The thing is, though, is that depending on whether you are a young Earth creationist or an old Earth creationist, I am no longer a young Earth creationist. I now am convinced that the Earth is very old, and we have gone through these different stages of destruction and, if you want to call it, recreation. I actually don't think Genesis 1 is a creation account, since there's no creation words used. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But it's, is Atlantis, was that pre-Genesis 1, or was it the Great Deluge, right? That being said, it seems like a lot of the He Walked Americas talks about that these people did not come from Japheth or Shem or Ham, that they came from another people group. So take that for what it is, right? That's the way it is in the world of research. We get all these different pieces, and we either discard things we don't like or try to put them together. But I have my theories on that and why that is. So
Yeah, so again with this book, you're saying that it was basically a bunch of Native Americans, this woman doing research and finding out that they're all talking about basically Jesus walking the Americas,
yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely, no doubt. And it's crazy too that, well, he's the one thing that I think really tripped me out is that he's referred to as the feathered serpent, or throughout there, or the plumed serpent, which is a term that is used. And we think of serpents in negative terms. We think of Satan. We think of reptilians, but actually serpents are dragons are actually seraphim angels. They're the fiery serpents. And so there are good reptilians and there's bad reptilians. There's good seraphim and bad seraphim, but he's described in a feathered serpent type of role. So a lot of that those icons, if you were to go there and look at them in South America, Mexico, and stuff, people would say, well, that's a worship of Satan. I don't really know. That's there for each person to describe for themselves, or figure out for themselves. Some of the things that I thought was really cool was how, like, hurricane, for example, the word hurricane apparently comes from, according to the author of this book, I'm just the messenger here, that the word hurricane is one of his names. He actually had many different names, and he actually calmed the storm like of a hurricane level, just completely calmed it. And so this word comes from that. So that I thought that was kind of cool when we talk about a hurricane that could be one of his many names.
Ricardo, Tony, or anybody, do you have any questions about this book or anything you want to bring up to Noel? I know, Tony, you probably got a lot about these old saint books and stuff like that, but
I
what
was
do you
gonna
got?
say something that reminded me of when he was bringing up the serpent thing, and I'm not saying that this does or doesn't have any relation, but there's kind of a reference of that, like in the Old Testament, where Moses held up the serpent, and if they looked upon it, they were healed. And there's also a New Testament verse in John 3:14, and it says that, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whomsoever believeth in him should not perish but have eternal life. So it's kind of like it was in that case a symbol of healing as well, in a sense. As weird as that may seem, because people, like they're kind of, I think Noel said that, people think negatively right away, but I don't know. There's, good angels too, as well as fallen, and they may look similar and they may be able to do similar things. So,
Yeah, that's how I feel with a lot of these buildings too, where people right away think that it's got to be pagan or something where they'll see certain animals or things on buildings, and I'm like Noel said, the seraphim and some of these things, they were actually godly creatures. Like it doesn't mean that they're, satanic or pagan. They could actually be Christian symbols. So
Yeah, the I well, when I say I'm convinced, I highly lean towards the serpent on the pole was a basilisk. And these basilisks, which are serpentine snake-like creatures with wings and they could fly, these are described in the book of Jasher as Moses worked with them a lot. And the they were all over Egypt at that time. We have historians that talk about it as well. They show up in medieval artwork, but yeah, there's good. So like the term watcher, for example, Moses's father. There's the book of the vision of Amram, and it's a story of him having a vision of these two watchers. And when we think of the word watcher, we think bad, right? Because Enoch chapter 6, the watchers came down, all the watchers are bad. That's not true. There are good watchers. A watcher is a job position, it's a title. Actually, it's the same thing with Satan. The word Satan is a job title. You can be a good Satan. And in fact, there are accounts in scripture where Yahweh uh, is like with Balaam and his donkey. At that time, he is Balaam's Satan. He's his accuser, right? So there's in that account that he meets these watchers. There's a good watcher and a bad watcher, an evil watcher, and they're both reptilian, like viper type creatures. So yeah, just want to reiterate that point right there. That and the elephant in the room, of course, is that you guys know that I come from a Torah background. I'm really big on that. And within the Torah communities, when you get more to Hebrew roots, they're really big. One way that I completely disagree with their entire worldview is that a lot of them get into this everything is pagan, like everything is pagan. And I just completely disagree with that. I'll give you guys an example. And this goes into like the two Babylons. A lot of propaganda against, say, Rome comes from the book The Two Babylons. Like the lady in the Madonna I'm sorry, she is the Madonna. The Madonna and child is, it goes back to Nimrod and Tammuz and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's pagan. Well, I completely disagree with that because we see Madonna and child in the constellations. We see people will say the virgin birth of Messiah is pagan. I disagree because we see Virgo in the constellations, and in fact, we see all these ancient world cultures all recognize the Virgin, and within Virgin you have the Madonna and the Child. This is the same thing you see all through Millennial Kingdom architecture, and so the idea is that when this to understand what is pagan and what is not. One of the things about the Watchers is that does anyone have a dye on? Ricardo, you have a red dye, a beanie on. So I'm not picking on you, but if we were to say that anything that the Watchers introduced to us is wrong, then that is the most satanic hat imaginable, because it was Azazel who introduced not only the sword to humanity, but also dyes and clothing, right? So if we have dyes and clothing, guys, that came from Azazel, who is Ha-Satan, the big guy, Azazel. He introduced dyes and clothing to the world. So we have to then ask the question, well, is that evil? Is dyes, we know that swords aren't evil, because in Genesis chapter 3, we got an angel coming down with a flaming sword. So we know that the swords originate in heaven. It means we know that dyes originate in heaven too. The thing is that when the Watchers came down, they introduced they were worthless mysteries, because they did not instruct humanity in righteousness. They instructed them in evil, basically throwing the pearl before the swine, so to speak, analogy. And so all these other cultures all over the world, you go into all these mystery religions, they're going to try to monopolize the mysteries of heaven. And it's a grave mistake to say, well, this mystery religion and that mystery religion has this and that. That's proof it's pagan. We need to deny it. No, it just means that they've monopolized it. They've taken something that originated from the religion of Shem, the Melchizedeks, that pre-existed through heaven, and they're throwing the pearls before the swine. So when we get into the architecture, I believe I don't go by Flamenco's timeline. That's completely fine if you guys do. But when we get into the Middle Ages and we look at all that architecture, I get that all the time. Oh, that's pagan, that's Masonic, all this kind of stuff. I could care less about the Freemasons, guys. I don't care. They are the two pillars of Freemasonry, all that stuff. And there's nothing gayer than, the only thing gayer than being gay is being a Freemason. All right. So, but they basically just borrowed, they're the inheritors, right? They're taking things and they're controlled opposition, and they're controlling older mysteries. And we just need to just kind of make sure that when we're throwing things out, that we're not actually throwing out actual mysteries of heaven. So
I agree with you so much. It's something that I've had an issue with a lot of people arguing about this stuff. It's again, if we're in this short season of deception, it would make sense that these people, these gay Masons or whoever, that they're hijack these symbols, and obviously they're about hiding a millennial kingdom or Jesus, so they make it like they created it. It's their symbol. The pyramid in the eye, oh, that's for Lucifer. Oh, this symbol is and they've just hijacked it all. I totally agree with you.
Oh, Vinny, look, I mean, let's just talk about the elephant in the room here. Any guy who puts a noose around his neck and he wears an apron and goes into a closet, like there's nothing gayer than that. Climbs into a coffin with another dude or whatever.
Well,
whatever
it's
they're
actually
doing
like it's a ritual for Hiram Abiff, which I'm sure you probably already know, with Solomon, and that's what they try to say, that it has to do with Hiram Abiff.
Well, and just remember now, when we're talking, because there's a lot of two pillars out there. When we talk about like the two pillars of Freemasonry, where are they getting that from? They're getting from the Bible, right? So just kind of throw that out there for everyone. Yeah, there was something the pyramids, for example. According to the writings of Abraham, most likely the pyramids were actually first built by Seth, and they were finished by Shem after the flood. And so those would actually be monuments that were created to Yah. They were not like they don't even know. Like, it's kind of interesting when you get into Egypt, where now I get it. Like, there's a whole theory about Napoleon built the pyramids and whatever. Like, that's fine. Everyone's free to go down those routes. But I actually do. I'm one of those guys that actually go with official chronology. And I could get into that, why I think that is. But what's interesting about Egypt is that you go through each generation and the pyramids get crappier and crappier, and they're actually reducing in tech know-how until they just become these mud heaps, at the very end. And so the original humans who built those, they weren't even Egyptian. It was basically the Egyptians came in, and the first dynasty and the second, and so on and so forth, and they hijacked these pyramids, and they made it into their whole culture.
Well, I know you said that you don't follow maybe the flamenco timeline stuff, but I think there's a lot of interesting information. It's why I've been into those books. I find a lot of things, not just timeline deception. And one of the things that got me is they pointed out that uh there was these archaeologists and researchers who went out to the museum in Cairo a while ago, and they right away saw that there was Christian symbolism everywhere. And the guy called it out. And then the Museum of Cairo started hiding all these artifacts because they want to push that these are newer Egyptian stuff when in reality they were Christian. They also talk about a lot of these hieroglyphs are actually biblical stories. So I think that this could be sort of a cover up also of
Sure.
Christianity and Millennial Kingdom and trying to make it like it's Egyptian. You talked about going to cemeteries all over. I point out there's obelisks in all these Christian cemeteries. Obviously has nothing to do with Egypt and Osiris's phallic. This was a Christian symbol that they've hijacked again.
Yeah, well, according to Travels and Noah into Europe, the original Osiris and Isis were actually aligned with the Melchizedeks. They were the first pharaoh, the first dynasty. And I've done research on that and matched it up and showed, that the Scorpion King and so on that killed Horus, but they I'm sorry, Osiris, but yeah, it was according to that, it was later on that the mysteries of Isis became something perverted and completely different than what they originally were. So you have, according to this, they were actually righteous rulers there, and they were working specifically with, according to that, it says Shem. So people argue up the wazoo who Melchizedek was, but I believe that Shem was a Melchizedek. Anyways, yeah. So to that point, we definitely see symbols and other things like that. They change meaning through the years, and I remember you told me that a couple years ago, Vinny, about Egypt to potentially being much newer than they're letting it out.
Yeah, and that there was Christian symbols everywhere that they right away took out of the museum and hide now.
Well, would that
Um,
would that change your opinion then about say Rome? Because the popes, for example, the hats they wear or things like that, they are constantly criticized for being pagan. But what if they really did have true Christian origins to it?
it's funny you say that. I mean, me and my friend Matt, we kind of believe that it was an original good thing, that
It
it
is
has
funny
to be
you say
again.
that.
So we're probably all leaning towards that. I'll let everybody speak for themselves, but where again, it's sort of like a recent short season event where everything got corrupted in the church. And because another thing too, which you've done great work, Noel, is all about the saints. And it seems like the early Catholic Church, it was a ton of stuff all about these saints, which would make sense for a millennial kingdom.
Yeah, how specifically do you want me to direct that? Because like you are you talking about like the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church, and the feast days, the saints, or what specifically about the saints? Because I've looked at it from different angles.
Matt,
I actually have.
Matt, you're probably dying to say something to Noel. I'll let
I
you
mean,
Can
pick.
you hear me okay? Because I can't,
Yeah, sound
my
great.
headphones don't work.
You
Um,
sound great.
no, it's great to meet you. Thanks for all the work you've done, Ricardo and my Stiggy and Vinny, of course, you. I wouldn't be sitting here if you didn't never knocked on my door years ago and sending me videos about funny thing happened on the way to the moon, and that's where it all began with that. But
nice to
for
meet you,
me,
Matt.
no, one of the big questions I wanted to ask you is what qualifies to be a saint to you, according like when it comes to dying versus being raised up like Lazarus and being resurrected, the word resurrected in an immortal body, which I think those are two different things. So
Yeah.
do you have a like a criteria that qualifies for someone to become a actual titled saint?
Yeah, so this is a two-part answer. The first part will be the shorter, and then the second will be maybe a better clarification so I don't freak people out. The first one will be a little freaky. So the theme verse at the Unexpected Cosmology has been since day one, Revelation 14:12. Revelation 14:12. There's 3 times in the book of Revelation where it talks about the people that Satan specifically, or the dragon of old, is specifically at war with. In Revelation 14:12 talks about those who persevere to the end. The endurance of the saints are those who, number one, keep the Father's commands. Number two, the testimony of Yahshua. If you guys want to say Jesus, please don't freak out about that. Okay, Yahshua is the paleo of Yeshua, or Yahushua, or whatever, or of Jesus, Jesus. So that is in that context, the only people that Satan is at war with are those who keep the Father's commands and the testimony of Yahshua. It is Satan's goal to get everyone to not keep the Father's commands so that he can accuse you of not keeping the commands. That is his courtroom title. He is the accuser. So number two, so for me, that's what the Bible says. That's what I go with. The end definition aligns with the beginning definition, and there is consistency throughout the Bible. So the thing is that for me is I recognize that that everybody on this earth is in a different part on their walk. I mean, I could take you back when I was 3 or 4 years old. The first time I remember. Okay, quick story. Will highlight my point. Does anyone here familiar with the Awana program? It's kind of more, it's popular with like Baptist churches, kind of KJV only type of upbringing. I was 4 years old in Cubbies, and I remember I had to memorize the line, "God is Jesus and Jesus is God." I had to memorize that. I went up and memorized. I said it, and I was so proud of my little self. And they gave me a little patch, and I'm hopping out of the room. And I remember that was the first time I heard Allah Hayam's voice, and that would be the paleo for God. So the first time I heard God's voice, and then nobody needed to explain to me. I just knew. He said, "Do you know what this means?" And I stopped and I said, God is Jesus, Jesus is God." I said, "I think so, yes." And he said, I will always be with you and never forsake you." All right. So from the earliest beginnings, I've always felt God's presence in my life as he guides me. And I want to be clear that when people love to try to debate me theology, I'm not really interested in debating doctrinal points. I find them pointless. Let's give it like this example right here. You go up to heaven, you're in front of the judgment, and he's like looking through your records here of all the things you did. And he's like, you lived a pretty good life. You were on Team Jesus and all that. But I'm noticing this one time here, you went from you had this stage in your life where you're a modalist, and there's some points against you there, but I can't get past this one time you were baptized and you were triple dip, man. But you weren't triple dip forward, you were triple dip backwards. And to make matters worse, each time you were dipped, they gave a different name of the Trinity. They're for separate, see what I'm saying? Like, I can't let you know. At the end of the day, I think that my vision of going into eternity is you could be so wrong about everything. You could be so completely wrong. You could be the worst doctrinal statements on earth. At the end of the day, are we conforming to the image of our Father? Okay, so it's not about whether you believe the Trinity or modalism or Arianism, or you just go down all the points, whether you believe in serpent seed or flat earth or globe earth or whatever. It's, are you conforming to the image of our Heavenly Father? When Yahshua came, he said, "I have said nothing or done nothing that I did not first hear from my Father, or that I did not see him do. And I have replicated these things for you so that you yourselves can do this," right? Walk as I walk. So for me, that's what it is to be a saint. We're on this earth to learn. We are, from the moment we're born, we're lied to. We are fed a gauntlet of lies, and we have to go through this waking up process. And our God is a merciful God who wants to be with us. He wants to save us. And we're all on different we all choose, every single one of us chooses how close we want to get to him. Some of us want to get closer to him than others, and that's just the way it is. So hopefully that helps. So at the end of the day, I'm not the judge of anyone's heart. Thank God. I am if I make it into the kingdom, I'm going to be like like a rag doll, like spaghetti arms and legs, like on the floor, face down, like just out of breath, like I just swam a triathlon and I made it to the shore. And one of you guys are gonna have to come along 10 years later, be like, hey man, here's a beer, you can get up now, right? I'll be like, oh, thank God I made it, right? I'm not to judge anyone's heart. So hopefully that answers your question. Revelation 14:12.
Yeah,
Uh,
I completely agree. Everything that like me and Vinny do and we're all doing is, I don't want to say it's extracurricular, but if we're not obeying God's command, which is to love and to love everyone, love God with all our mind, all our heart, all our soul, love our neighbor as ourselves. If we're not doing that first and foremost and having that above all this other stuff about trying to figure out, what timeline we're at, which I think is extremely important. Um, if we're not becoming conforming to God's law, which is love, then like Apostle Paul said, it's all for nothing. If we're just
I
a
agree. Yeah,
symbol.
nearly every time you go through the Torah or the Tanakh, even into the New Testament, and Yahweh is just angry at the rebellion of mankind. He inevitably starts delving time and again. You can quote me on this, into describing what he wants. He wants us to care for the orphans, the widows, the foreigners, these kind of things. And this is why Joshua says, there's going to be many people that are thinking they're going to enter the kingdom, and he's like, I never knew you. They were performing miracles in his name. There was power in his name, doing all these things. He's like, I don't, you're nothing like me. Yeah, there's power in my name, great, but you're nothing like me. And there's going to be these people that, and I'm not a universalist by any means, but I think that there will be many Muslims and many people who enter the kingdom, because they'll go like, who are you? I don't even know who you are. And he'd be like, well, all those times you visit people in prison, and all those times you fed me and I was naked and you clothed me, you're doing those things to me. And this is what I go back with on my channel all the time. I love doctrine, I love debates, I love looking into things. But at the end of the day, if we are not conforming to the image of our Heavenly Father, then forget about it. Like, why do we even want to be in his kingdom if we don't want to be like him? So, and this is the whole thing with the millennial kingdom. We claim that, I don't know what you guys say, Jesus or Jesus or whatever. I like to point out that Jesus is a Satan's little season term, only 500 years old. That's neither here nor there. That's fine. But we're claiming he was king, right? That he is ruler, and every king has laws. Every king has laws, and you take a knee and you're like, yes, I will obey you. And if you are disobedient to the king, he has a right to kick you out. And we have to ask the question, why are we no longer inhabiting this millennial kingdom? Well, it's the story of the Bible. The story of the Bible is that mankind will inevitably always rebel. That
Yes.
it happened with Adam and Eve. It happened at Sinai. It happened with the prophets, with Joshua. Just rebel, 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 rebel. That's always the way it is. So he can come and physically rule on this earth, and we are so depraved as a people. People will look him in the face and go, "I'm rebelling. I want nothing to do with you," and that's always going to be the way it is.
It's a great point. I even sometimes wonder about this little season after the 1,000-year reign of Christ is for Judgment Day purposes. For God basically saying after the 1,000-year reign, after there's rulership over the entire earth, that he's going to actually not remove himself, but almost let man do it one last time on his own without the iron rod of Jesus Christ over the nations and his saints ruling over. Let's see how man does without me one last time. And we're living it right now. And it's a total disaster. We're never evolving to do what's good on our own without God. And I sometimes wonder if that's what part of this season is going to be about, which is a civilization that has fallen away from God is always going to go to destruction.
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah. I definitely agree. Yeah. I mean, but that's the reason why so this is, it's the same story as, okay, so let's put it this way. Could take you guys back to the Torah real quick. What happens in Sinai, Paul says something that wherever the Torah is, rebellion or sin expounds, it grows. Because wherever there is Yah's instructions of righteous living, people rebel against it. They don't want anything to do with it. So the same thing happened at Sinai. So Yahweh, he writes finger on the Ten Commandments. He presents it to them, and he says, "Here's my covenant with you." And the first thing you see is everyone's like, "No, we don't want this. We're rebelling against this." And he's like, "Okay, fine. As a result, you're going to wander through the wilderness another 38 years, 40 in total." And of course, 40 is the number of judgment. We see the same thing with 40 years from the resurrection of Messiah to the destruction of the temple. And we're in the same kind of time frame right now where there's a wandering through the wilderness where he wanted to take him directly. Like he was like, "I'm going to put you out here in the wilderness for 2 years and then you're going to go straight into the land." And as a result of the rebellion, he's like, "No, you're not entering the land. You guys are all going to die off. I'm going to ensure that, and your children will enter. You told your children this and that. Well, they're going to prove you wrong, and they're going to enter." And so that's the time frame I think we're in right now. The rabbis would say that nothing happened to the patriarchs that doesn't happen to us, and so we're wandering through this wilderness, having to be tested and tried, and learning, and seeing if we are worthy to enter the kingdom. Which again, I want to point out that the kingdom is within, right? So for everyone out there who can get mad and be like, "Well, our controller stole the kingdom from us and they lied to us." Well, that's great and all, but fact of the matter is, Yahshua told us that the kingdom is within, and that every single one of us can choose to live in the kingdom.
Yep.
And what I tell people on my channel all the time, I'm like, you guys have to love your service to Yah. Like all this, like, I hate this life. I just want to get out of here. I just want to get raptured out of here or whatever. Like, what makes you think you're going to change? Like, let's say you get transformed in a twinkling of an eye. What's going to change for you? You're going to be a robot now? At the end of the day is that if we do not love our pursuit of the truth, are living our lives for our King, for the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, if we don't love our service, then it's like, why are we going to actually enjoy eternity? Because what's going to be different? We could be sent on missions like the angels to whole other creations that are, just sinful or whatever, and be like, "Man, I hate this. This sucks," right? But we have to love our service.
That is
I'm
well
sorry, I didn't
said.
mean to come on and be
Yeah,
preachy today.
I
No,
completely
you're
agree. Go
you're
ahead, Ben.
great. You're great, Noel. I mean, that's why we needed you on here. You have like I said, you have a wealth of information, been doing this just as long as anyone or more than anyone. So, I felt like it's gonna be basically us asking you questions. Tony, I know you haven't really got to say anything yet. If there's any questions, just feel free anytime to pop in. Ricardo, you too, obviously.
Now, can I
Um,
just say one thing real quick, Vinny?
sure.
I can totally. I'm happy just to sit here and listen to you guys all talk and stuff. But if you guys do want me to talk about anything, I would like to talk about the what I call the 7,000-year timeline deception, and why I've settled on the timeline of history that I have. But I just want to throw that out there. That I'd love to talk about that today at any time. But yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to just hear your
I think that
guys'
would be
thoughts too.
I think that would be great. No, I know that you just did a video about something about what's the identity of the Jews. And I didn't watch it because it's actually what I'm looking into a lot right now. And a lot of that has to do with like stuff in Ezekiel. Um, would you mind going into the video that you made about the Jews,
Well, Matt,
their identity?
you're not going to like the video then, because it wasn't me. I brought on my friend Andrew Hoy. So what I'm doing mostly on my channel now is like what we're doing today. I do panel shows, but I bring on many guests who I completely disagree with.
Okay,
They will have points of views on things, because I really believe that it's important to hear different points of views.
sure.
And instead of just being like, "Well, if this doesn't fit my worldview, I'm going to chuck it," to take what people are saying and challenge us, on little points here and there, and we change that way. So I brought on my buddy, Andrew Hoy, and he's a brilliant man. I mean, he's like, I've told him I will never debate you. He's the guy that has his life research has been showing how the tabernacle in the wilderness was circular and dome shaped. That not only fits the firmament, but it actually fits these buildings we're seeing all through the millennial kingdom. But his whole thing was, you guys are going to love this. His whole thing was that Israel's legitimate, that they are the real Jews, and the Palestine needs to go. So that was his whole position, and I brought him on to give his points, and I sat there and I listened. But if you want my position on the Jews, I think that's what you're maybe asking, which you're not going to.
Yeah, I actually didn't. I didn't watch any of it because I didn't want to get anything contaminated with like what I'm believing and have it put into my head, and then I think I'm believing it. So I wanted to compare
here's
it.
one of the so here's one of the things I've changed my opinion on is that coming into the conspiratorial realm years ago, I was fed the whole Edomite, thing that the modern Jews are the Edomites, right? And this is where you get into the prophets, the minor prophets. They all warn of these Edomites coming in and taking over the land. And so at first, because I was kind of an end times, Revelation is still future, I'm like, this is happening right now. This is the Edomite invasion. But as I investigated more and more, I wrote the first ever commentary on the Gospel of Peter. It's like almost a 400-page, just line for line commentary. And that was really helpful for me in understanding that the Edomite invasion, that it was actually fulfilled in the first century. King Herod was an Edomite, of course, and it's actually Esau. Remember Esau?
Yes.
So when Isaac is born, and he's holding on to Esau's heel, the idea is that Esau is trying to reverse engineer the Genesis 3 prophecy, and he's trying to crush his head, and he's fighting back, right? So
Is there,
ultimately,
by the way, is there any guess on what you think Esau may have looked like?
What, with the ginger?
Yeah, but you can go on. Yeah,
was he
like
a hairy
totally
Sasquatch?
hairy.
Yeah, Chewbacca, whatever.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
yeah. Let me address that. Let me just say quickly though, is that just to sum up this initial point, is that I believe that Esau did eventually, he actually killed Messiah, right? That's what Herod's did. They actually, I think Pontius Pilate was innocent. I don't think he did it. I think he was framed.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, in terms of Esau, there's interesting. Who was the Sasquatch researcher? Was that you, Matt?
No, not me. I think it was
started
Tony, maybe.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, Tony, there you are. Okay, yeah. So what's interesting is I just published a book called Wild Man in 19th Century America. And I took all the newspaper clips I could find on Wild Man. He didn't become Sasquatch until like the 1920s, whatever. He started becoming Bigfoot and all that. But the original sightings of him were very European, like the Woodwosen. And some of them fit very much a kind of a Sasquatch type of person, but others very much more almost like a Washington Irving kind of Satan and New England type of person. That being said, the earliest literature we have, the Epic of Gilgamesh, you have as the I guess he's the antagonist, or is he the protagonist? I don't really know. It depends who you think the protagonist is or the antagonist, but is Enkidu, who is he is a wild man, right? He is created by the gods as a wild man. And it's interesting when you get into the Kolbrin, if you guys have ever read that, which is phenomenal. The prophet character who fits the mold of Abraham, he has a friend who is also a wild man, and this wild man can disappear. He could be in the room with you and you don't even know he's there. And this wild man actually gets killed in the Genesis 13 war. It's kind of sad. But so you see all these wild men on the earth. They were called Yoslings by some cultures. And they kind of invariably kind of showed up and they had some sort of connection to the spiritual realm. I think that there's good Sasquatches and bad Sasquatches, just like the Seraphim. I don't think they're all bad. The analogy I use to this, people are like, they're Nephilim, or the other one is that they're like the lineage of Cain or whatever. Could be, I don't really know. But here's the analogy I give. Imagine you're a woman I don't think anyone here wants to imagine you're a woman, but just imagine a woman. We're not that type of group, okay? But just imagine a woman jogging through a park. Let's just say in Europe, because that's that's the big thing right now, and uh, and like this, she sees no men along the way, and then this gang of dudes come out and rapes her. It's a horrible scene, and then she concludes that all men are like this, and we're going, no, that's not true. Like the reason why you met those evil men is because for that, like the good men were leaving you alone. They were minding their own business, right? They were just going about their task. And that's how I see Sasquatch, that he's I actually classify him as a fairy, that he's like a caretaker of the woods, and he's ancient. And there's many of them, of course, and they can disappear and materialize. And we live in a spiritual realm. They're all around us. They're in the clouds, the lightning, the whirlwinds, the tornadoes, the hurricanes. The wind everywhere, and they're farming the earth. And they mind their own business. We mind ours. They don't bother us. We only interact typically with the evil spirits, right? But anyways, so that's why I think so many Sasquatch sightings are negative, because they're a malnourished individual that is trying to get something out of us. But yeah, I don't even know if you were going there, but Esau does fit some wild man descriptions, interestingly enough. I don't know how to explain it. I've commented on this many times. I don't have the answers on it, but he does seem to, he could very well be one.
When you say that Sasquatch is like a fairy, that's interesting because, I used to listen to like Sasquatch Chronicles and stuff, and oftentimes they're saying that like that's linked to a sighting is like orbs and stuff like that as well. And
Hmm.
then they'll see an orb and then they'll have an encounter with the Sasquatch or whatever, which is kind of interesting because there's a lot of people, like even in the Sasquatch community, they're kind of split down the middle too. Like, oh, it's only physical, and then the other, like what people would say, woo woo, and so it's kind of like, it's kind of like, you know, it's one of those things. It has to be one or the other, but it's kind of like it's both. Like you said,
Right.
we're in a spiritual realm where they can somewhat manifest physically to us. Because I even heard of encounters where uh, a young child, they recall one that actually saved them from drowning or something like that, and then brought them out, and then they just flew off and never saw him again. But there's a bunch
Yeah,
of crazy sightings of stuff like that.
in the book, Wild Man in 19th Century America, I have four classifications that I'm looking at. Number one is that you do see the earliest sightings you see from like the 1820s and whereabouts. They actually fit a perfect description of the modern Sasquatch. It just says people envision Sasquatch, like the earliest ones they started out the sightings in like Massachusetts, Maine, that area. They all disappeared after a while. Then you see sightings where it seems to be an actual physical ape or orangutan type creature that could very well have lived in North America, and maybe it's extinct now or whatever. There's that too. But there's there's then the what I would say the spiritual component, and the what I would call the fairy creature. And then the fourth would be actually a hoax, because at the end of the day, some of the newspapers were hoaxing this. And some of the stories I would read are straight up like Scooby-Doo, like imagine if, I mean, there's cases where I was researching where like the Stagecoach Road, this looks like a guy in a suit keeps popping up, and trying to scare them. And I was kind of wondering if they're trying to keep them on the highways, right? They're trying to keep them off. That's one of the tales we would see about trying to keep people out of the woods, because that's where the devil is. That's where he's going to get you, right? You stay on the path, which kind of ties into our whole Tartaria mud flood research. But I would see all four of those there. Yeah. One of my friends, Sean Walkingbear, he's an actor, and he's been on like Netflix TV shows and things like that. He talks about, going on his spirit quest, and he has seen many Sasquatches. But he talk about the dwarfs, the leprechauns in America, the Smurfs, which are basically extinct now in America. Apparently, all the Native Americans are saying they no longer exist. They used to be some cultures call them the brownies. And then you have in the earliest sightings in like the 1700s, people are talking about seeing mermaids here and or mermen and all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, it seems like
Yeah,
the
I
I've
mean,
heard,
they even had them on the maps. Like, why would you put it on the map
Mm.
if it wasn't something real? You know, and like you're saying, every culture all over the world talks about Sasquatch or like, you know, they have a different name or whatever, but everybody's talking about the same thing. It's just like everybody all over the world talks about the Great Flood, like Noah, you know, the flood with Noah. And everybody talks about dragons. Dragons, you know, I'd like to get that thrown into this talk too. I mean,
Well, before we do that, I want to find out, Tony. So, did you ever find Bigfoot in the end? Did you find Sasquatch?
Well, I think Sasquatch found me. My first trip into the woods, I had a rock the size of a football thrown at me. It could have hit me. I'm pretty sure it could have killed me. But instead it just landed next to me and rolled. And I called out to my friend who was, you know, hundreds of feet away, and I just said, "Did you just throw a rock?" And he said, "No." So I'm pretty sure they were telling me, "We don't want you here," whatever they are. And I do agree with Noel too. I think there are physical Sasquatch, but I think there's a supernatural element too. And I think something to do with portals. If you guys follow L.A. Marzulli, he had a gentleman on who put a camera on his back,
yeah,
filming behind him, and he just walked down a trail, and he saw on, and you can see it, there's video, a portal opens up, and what you see, a face that appears to be like a Sasquatch, or even, dare I say, a giant or something looking thing with a beard. You see this face start to manifest inside this portal. Um, so I think there's both. I think there's physical, like Noel said, they've been here forever. They're keepers of the woods, and then there's a supernatural aspect of them too.
by the way, that that thing that LA did, uh he my wife and I were watching that and we're like, that is freaking brilliant, because we always think about putting cameras in front of us. But when was the last time any of us thought about walking through the woods and putting a camera behind us at the thing? Because, right, because they're like, oh, they passed, right? They don't see us. And it seems like we would see a lot more
Mhm.
supernatural stuff if we tried something like that. So that guy was like brilliant. I'd never thought of that before. They're also identified with trees. I don't know if LA really gets into this too much. He really likes making the alien connection. Um, and I love LA. LA's a great guy, but LA's like I think he would be like you know, I'm like a freak around him with this, because like he's like Sasquatch are all bad, like Nephilim or whatever. But the there's good reason to. I love the rock story, by the way. I've interviewed a lot of Sasquatch people. They talk about the rocks being thrown at them. There's one guy who had seen many Sasquatches in his life. He talks about being at a river one time, and he's like just chucking rocks into the trees across the river, just like you would do in the woods. And all of a sudden, there's this huge like groosh, like just this, you know, like in the water, right? Like a rock sound, this explosion. He's like, what in the world? And he's like, did something throw? And so he took a big rock and he threw it into the tree. And then it just, this huge like boulder comes out at him. And he's like, okay, I'm not throwing anymore. You know, I just left it alone. But this same guy, it's kind of interesting. This guy that I interviewed, I know him like 30 minutes down the road. He believes the Sasquatch is purely gorilla, physical, no spiritual component, right? And I love this because he's actually being honest in his assessment. And here's what he said. He said the first time he saw Sasquatch, of the many he saw, was in Oregon, and he's walking down the road, and in his peripheral vision, he sees a mossy tree stump, and he thought nothing of it. And then all of a sudden, in the corner of his eye, he sees a tree stump stand up, and he's like, "What the?" And he turns around, and it's a full Sasquatch walking across the road and just going up a hill, right? And he's terrified of this. And I asked him about the tree stump. I said, "What do you make of that?" And he's like, "Well, I must have been mistaken." I'm like, and I asked him, "Well, could it have really been a tree stump?" He's like, "Well, no, that's impossible. That's you know, scientifically impossible." This guy's like a globe Earth guy too, right? And there's been many stories of people, like there's one story of a guy who saw a Sasquatch running right past him. The Sasquatch jumps into a ditch, and he goes and looks in the ditch, and it's just a tree, like a big tree branch in there. And
Hmm.
so I actually wonder if there is a connection to the trees, to the dryads. And this is one of the reasons I bring up that they're all the oldest stories in Mesopotamia talk about how they're the guardians of the animals in the forest, and so there may be a kind of a tree beard type of connection with them, kind of like
You
an imp
think
thing.
that
But
there could be like a chameleon aspect to them too? Like, that squid that can go over something and just conform to it and stuff, and that's part of it too? Because I've heard some people
Yes, their
speculate
fur.
that as well.
When their
yeah, I
fur is
think
exposed to sunlight, it changes to the color of the background, whatever they're standing in front of. That was analyzed under a microscope. So yeah, I think maybe it's
Interesting.
possible.
Yeah, and Tony, you sound like a guy, like a hardcore researcher. So, but I would just refer to the ending to Harry and the Hendersons. As funny as it may sound, but remember when they go release Harry and you're all crying because like, oh, he's going to leave the family, and they send him off in the woods, and then his family is all standing there, but they're trees, right? You can't see them, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, they just stand up and walk away. And so my whole thing is that because I'm one of those guys that I do believe that there are some trees that have spirits in them, and that they are alive. Not all trees, as C.S. Lewis say, many have fallen asleep. But there is a connection to that, and I think that we could possibly pass Sasquatch by all the time. Just on the woods, just pass a tree, never even think about it, never even
I
know
think
he's
that's
there.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason they're blurry on video, they say, is because they vibrate at a much higher frequency than we do. So that's why all the video is blurry and it's hard to catch them on camera.
You know, I don't know as much as you guys on this, but it's funny that recently I saw that, with AI now, AI, someone used it, that famous video of that Bigfoot walking through the woods. I can't think of the guy who,
The Patterson
recorded.
film.
Yes. They used AI to see if they could prove that it was fake, and that it actually, AI came back saying, and the people that were involved saying that no, this couldn't have been faked. So I figured I'd throw that out there too for you guys. That's something recent I seen.
Well,
Tony,
Yeah,
when you're
no,
talking about the frequency thing, I've heard testimonies too where people say that like all of their electronics just completely go dead and stuff like that. Do you think that that's part of the reason for that because of the frequency or whatever? I've heard a lot of stories like that.
yeah. And orbs and even UFOs, whatever UFOs are seen in conjunction with Bigfoot sightings as
Right.
well. So yeah, there's some connection to that whole side, whatever the orbs are and UFOs. Yeah.
So what is everybody's take on dragons? Let's get into dragons a little now. I mean, Noel, you got Saint Brendan and a lot of these old stories you've gotten into, and we see them on flags, and I mean, the Chinese, they have a calendar where it's like, the year of the rooster, the year of this, and the dragon is one of them. I mean, everybody's basically like, every culture talked about them, the symbols everywhere. Let's get into dragons a little.
yeah. I guess my question for the panel, my first question would be, dinosaurs, hoax or real?
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I think they
uh,
were dragons or dragons and giant bones. That's what I think.
Yeah, giants too, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, the giant thing makes sense to me, the giant thing. But I'm
y-
not sure about the dragon.
yeah,
So
I mean, to me, it seems like, they show us that like a dragonfly now is pretty small, yet they got fossils of dragonflies that were like a couple feet long, alligators that were super big compared to what we have now. So I think it's pretty safe to say that in the past, at some point, whatever the environment was or whatever was the cause, everything was bigger. So why not be giants?
what
And
one of the things I want to point out when we have this dinosaur discussion is now this the reason I asked that question is because I remember back in the day when flat Earth was first taking off, and Eric Dubay was a big component of dinosaurs are a hoax, right? All the fossils are all hoaxes. And this is something that I have tried to consider through the years. And I've always grown up knowing, and I grew up a young Earth creationist, and I always grew up knowing that paleontology is one of the most corrupt fields out there. And I was told, I remember back in the 90s and 80s that some of these were hoaxes, right? This is what young Earth creationists were already saying. So it wasn't a surprise to me to find out how corrupt it is. But at the end of the day, I've decided that just because it's corrupt, and they have invented many fake dinosaurs and there is money to be made in it, no doubt, that doesn't, I have talked to some real legitimate Christian paleontologists who have gone out there, like Joe Taylor. I've interviewed him, and he's find sauropods, Allosaurus. The Allosaurus you can find at the Ark Encounter in Kentucky. He actually dug up. So that being said, I have a lot of thoughts on these dragons,
Yeah.
and I don't really have answers on them. I do. Okay, so but let me just say this really quickly. Let's say that the dinosaurs, that the Earth is young, and that these dinosaurs existed in Genesis. All right, let's just start there. I took my kids to the Smithsonian a couple of years ago, and they had a really good dinosaur exhibit there. And I was actually really taken back because the last time I had seen dinosaur fossils was when I was a little kid, and dinosaurs look really big to you. You remember when, like in Hook, where Robin Williams says to Hook, he's like he looks really small or something like that. But you know, because the last time he saw him, he was like a giant to him. He's a kid, right? And I'm like, man, these dinosaurs look really small. Like they look like these Dimetrodons look like the size of the alligators right outside my window here, the right down there, or the Triceratops look like the size of an ox. They weren't that big. But I want you guys to think in these terms. If the I don't know how you guys feel about Ron Wyatt, but let's just assume for the sake of argument that the ark he found in Turkey is a legitimate Noah's Ark, all right? The altar there, whoever built that altar, he was anywhere from 15 to 30 feet tall, all right? So Noah was anywhere from 15 to 30. Let's say he's a 30-footer, all right? By time you get to, when you look at the Millennial Kingdom maps, the old maps, you see a lot of Lot's wife there, where you can go see her. All these pilgrimage sites in the Middle East. Her pillar is still there to this day. Jasher says she will be there to the end of the time. It's still there. She's like a 12-footer, guys.
I actually made a video. I did a show with an archaeologist, a Christian archaeologist back in 2012, Jonathan Gray. And it's on my channel if people want to see the Sodom and Gomorrah video. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of evidence, and he breaks it down, and there's a pillar standing there backing up everything you're saying.
People will mock this,
Interesting.
going, "Oh yeah, he had a 12-foot tall wife." Yeah, she had shrunk down considerably since Noah's time, from 30 foot to 12 foot. They were getting smaller with each generation. But I just want everyone to think about this. If Noah is a 30-footer, you take the Velociraptors are not as big as they make them out in the Jurassic Park movies. They were like the size of maybe turkeys, like large turkeys. This is something he would have stomped on with his feet. He could have taken a T-Rex and just put his arm around it and just, or like ridden it. You know, it might have been too small for him to ride. You see what I'm saying? And so we always have to remember this when we're looking at these huge so-called fossils, and they're like, oh, you know, they're huge compared to men. No, it wouldn't have been so in pre-Diluvian time. Now, I'm of the opinion, of course, the dinosaurs, these fossils are older than Genesis 1, that they are the old world. And I sometimes wonder if they are seraphim angels, that there was some sort of great judgment, that we're actually looking at these dragon creatures, because most of the dragon, like for example, St. George and the Dragon, I don't believe he actually fought a dragon, guys. I could go into that. It's all esoteric for the reptilian that he slayed in the Antichrist. But so this dragon symbology we see, they're I believe that they're spiritual entities. That's just my opinion. That's my conclusion.
Okay.
That, like I said, there's good dragons, there's bad dragons, and it goes back to like Pendragon, or King, what is it? Was it King Uther? With no, Uther Pendragon. What was it? I can't think of it at the moment. I just went to his castle where the red and the white dragon fought. Whatever. But you know, it goes into all that, where there's these dragons that are always clashing with each other for the powers of history. So, but anyways, wherever
You're saying these are more entities than actual dragons, like you know, like scaly winged fire breathing dragons.
I believe so, yeah. Now that maybe they can materialize, but yeah, I think that, yeah, like for example, like I said, seraphim angels, they are an actual reptilian dragon. In fact, when interestingly enough, in the paleo, that we're translating. When Aaron throws down his rod, it doesn't become a nephash. It doesn't become a serpent. It actually becomes a tannin. It becomes a actual dragon. It's the word used for dragon. So you had these two dragons warring in Pharaoh's court right there.
I wanted
So
to add something real quick about fossils that I feel like a lot of people don't think about or talk about is it's actually really hard for a fossil to be made, and it's actually a process that has to happen. Like if something dies naturally, within a few days, it's breaking down, animals are eating it, the elements are breaking it down. There's not going to be anything left of it. Um, and I feel like there's something to the whole mud flood and the Noah event to where, there's some fossils where they show things were literally eating when they got turned into a fossil. So to me, it's like the only thing that really made sense to me for years is there had to be some type of catastrophic event or Noah's flood kind of event where everything got buried and uh and that's how these things were turned into fossils. So I feel like this was, fossils happened at an event, like a mud flood type of event where things got buried and then the minerals and nutrients absorb into the bones, they harden, they're protected from the elements. Um, and it's not just like things die and then they turn into fossils. An event has to happen, and I think that it backs up Noah's flood, and that
E-
that
can I
was the
get
Even,
event.
can I just say something? They found
Sure.
soft tissue in what they call dinosaur bones. This was pretty recently. And as far as the dragons, I'm not so sure that they weren't real fire-breathing, reptilian creatures, because there's an article from like an 1800s newspaper that says two men from, I think it was in Texas or Arizona, like shot and killed a dragon. And in those days, apparently, it wasn't that rare to see them because it was just like another, it wasn't even front page news. It was like buried in, the fifth page of the newspaper. Two men spotted a dragon, shot it, and killed it. And uh, so, and the other last thing I want to say is that the bones that they show in these museums are not the real bones. I'm pretty sure you guys know that, but those
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
admittedly they're
Yeah.
all plaster, right? The
Yep.
real bones, we don't know what the real bones look like, and that's why I personally believe they may be just bones of the giants, right? And they had to find a way
Uh-huh.
to cover them up, so they said, "Oh, that's not a giant, that's the bone of a brontosaurus," and they made these things up.
The Smithsonian has wisened up to this now because I think for the longest time people were coming in and asking them that question, are these real? And in fact, I did the same thing. I went into the Smithsonian and be like, okay, do you have the real ones in the back and whatever? But I've noticed that they have been changing their exhibits now, where they have these diagrams and they will tell you actually how much are real, assuming they're telling the truth, right? But they will admit to you, like you like this whole T-Rex skull that's not real, right? They actually like a T-Rex might have just a few ribs that they say are real out on display, that kind of stuff. So they have been enough conspiracy theorists have been coming in to drive these guys crazy enough that they've decided to put the money in on their exhibits.
And they changed it into now they come out and they admit that they were birds, that a lot of them had feathers. And I always thought about T-Rex, right? They make fun of the little arms, but if you think about it, it's almost like chicken wings,
Like a
and that it was like
chicken.
a bird. It was just a giant
Yeah.
bird, is what I think.
So you
So
So
reckon
Noel,
that?
Do you think that, there's like things that they put out to kind of muddy the waters too, it's like easily debunkable, and then another thing it puts out and it's legit, and then that kind of just people throw the baby out with the bathwater, and like, for us, in a sense, we're like, well, automatically it's just no good. And what you're kind of saying maybe is that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater in those cases, in a sense.
So yeah, so with and this is where I think I started out saying that I don't even know, and it's a pleasure meeting all of you guys as well again, but I don't even know where the conversation has gone with the Millennial Kingdom because or even historical revisionism, Tartaria, all that stuff. I haven't watched any of that. I've decided that I don't want anything to distract my kind of investigation where I was going with this. And I found that eventually I went on this trajectory that was so far removed from the mainstream conversation. So my whole thing with history is that I don't like throwing out history and saying it's a lie. And here's why. Because then I'm becoming worse than my controllers. I'm saying that if I were to say it's all BS, it's all made up, we've been lied to about it, and now, let's say the Jesuits or the Benedictine monks, made all this up, and then I just go start making stuff up. Well, now I'm just projecting onto them what I'm already doing. And so that's for me, that's too easy. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I don't want to have to deal with this. I'm just going to say it's all fake. I'm just going to make it all up, right? It's much harder to disprove it. It is really hard. I can give you guys examples of things that I cannot disprove. And I think that is all of our task, to take our time and go through this and say, everything from the Crusades, Black Plague, Anglo-Saxon invasion, just go down the list. And it's much harder than we make it out. So, because we'll just use
I
these
think
dates.
they've scrambled the dates. I think that they've
could
just
be.
scrambled a lot of the
Yeah.
dates, and like you said,
Well,
like these
let me give
events
you-
are probably happen, but it's just hard with the dating.
Let me give you an example of this. Ms. Diggy, you're over there in London, and this is
Yeah,
something
my
you can.
my sticky.
My Diggy, I'm sorry. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. My apologies. This is something you in the UK can investigate, because I spent 3 months this year in the UK. Spent time going into Scotland, Wales, all over. And as you guys know, so my timeline, which I'd love to talk about today, is that the Millennial Kingdom started in the 500s. The end of the world happened around 536 to 541. And I have specific reasons for coming to those conclusions that are scriptural and not just, like Anatoly Fomenko or some of those guys, the 700 years at a time, all that kind of stuff. I feel it fits like a glove. But so in the 500s, you have these barbarians, the Goths, the Visigoths, all over the world, invading Rome and the world. You have the Anglo-Saxons come over, right? So the idea is that in the 500s, the Anglo-Saxons invade England, and the original inhabitants of England are pushed into modern day Wales. And then in the around 1000, you have the Normans come over from France, and they invade and they take over the Anglo-Saxons. And according to official history, the Normans have never been defeated. To this day, they are still the ruling, the French kings are still ruling over England to this day. And so they will tell you that all the infrastructure you see in England that is medieval comes from the late Middle Ages, the cathedrals, castles, they come from the Normans, and the Anglo-Saxons didn't contribute that. Now, within Millennial Kingdom research, one of the things I was pushing forward 3 or 4 years ago was that the Anglo-Saxons was this, the saints coming in and they're establishing this. So I go over to England, I'm going and speaking to people in Wales, and they have their own language. And like, I'm just going around and I'm looking at the architecture. I'm like, okay, that's where the Anglo-Saxons were. I could see it, right? And I couldn't disprove it. Like, I could not, it would be easy for me to say, guys, oh yeah, that's just, they made the whole thing up. Now I'm just going to invent whatever I want, but I couldn't disprove it. And I encourage, and this is not a challenge of ego. Like, I encourage anyone, go over there, go talk to the people, go to the pubs, go talk to the people, go to these places and disprove it. And I couldn't do it. So that's one of the things about history. So my idea in history, now, let me just say, my idea in history is that it's very much like it is today. All right. Yes, I know they lie to us in the media all the time, right? It's a psyop after psyop after psyop, right? And then we ask the question, well, how much of history is a lie? Well, the thing is that, like, I have buddies that served in Iraq. I know that they went to Iraq. I know that Iraq was not that really people died in that war. Now, we could have been lied to about why we were there in Iraq and everything around it, but Iraq happened. I know the Vietnam War happened. I know World War II happened. Yes. Were we lied to up the wazoo about World War II? Yes. But World War II sucked. Either you were running alongside a tank or hugging your butt goodbye as they're carpet bombing your ass, right? So well, I don't know if that's, Ricardo, if that's a nod or approval, but I'm saying is that, yeah, we're lied to throughout history. But I think that we still have to be able to take what they show us and do our due diligence, and that takes a lot of work. So anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Ms. Diggy.
Nice. Yeah, you could just
Oh my
say
goodness.
mice. Yeah, think of a
I'm
mouse. Just
so
run
sorry.
it. No,
I'm
it's
so
all good.
sorry.
No, but what I was going to ask you is, how would you then? What would you consider being able to disprove some of that information then? Because you said you came to the UK, you had a look, you spoke to the people, but is it not possible that people may have been, you know, their idea of what the history is could have been poisoned as well?
Well, the amazing thing about I've been all over the world, and you go to these communities and they have these oral histories that go way back. And so they all have their own unique stories. And to say that all of these are made up, I think is just it's for me, that's like, and I don't mean to be I'm not speaking to anyone here on this panel, but for me, that's like full retard mode. The thing is that the Jesuits and the Benedictine monks, they can on the national stage they can make stuff up, absolutely. But when you're okay, let me give you an example. All right, this is a big discussion in Millennial Kingdom circles. The idea that Israel, modern Israel, is not the historical Israel. Now, several years ago, I was really looking into that. I'm like, yeah, the Mormons in North America and all this kind of stuff. At that time, interestingly enough, there were all these people that were proving that England was historical Israel, or Spain was historical Israel, or South Africa was, all this kind of stuff. All those people suddenly got silenced. They're sitting on the sideline going like, what in the world just happened to us? Because now all the talk is that North America is, ancient Babylon, Egypt, Israel, that kind of stuff. For me, it's like, first of all, let's slow down and disprove that modern, without just that cocky, like, or just anyone who thinks I was just stupid type of thing. Like, let's disprove that modern Israel is ancient Israel. I can't do it. I cannot do it. For me, there's way too much evidence. But secondly, I'm giving you an example here to illustrate your point. Let's say, for an example, that modern Israel is not the Israel of the Bible, and that it really was North America. All right, so maybe Florida was the Garden of Eden, and the Grand Canyon was Egypt, or whatever. You just Babylon was up there in Canada, or wherever you place it all. Cedars of Lebanon was the redwoods. But the thing is that now the conspiracy is not that Israel has moved; it's that the English are the Japanese and the Africans are the Asians. And you have all these thousands of place names in the Bible, and nobody is anybody. And that goes way against the human experience. I don't believe they can lie to us on. You can take, I know satellites are fake, right? But you guys know what I'm talking about. You can take satellite imagery and you could show evidence that all roads really do lead to Rome, right? They really do. You could see all ancient roads lead there. So that's my whole thing on that. That I don't believe at that level they can do that. No, I think that there's a lot to be said about oral tradition coming from all these local communities. There was one really fascinating place I went to up by the Scottish border where the vampire of Bent. Have you guys ever heard of that? Well, that's a whole different story, but it was really crazy to find out that this vampire, like, I actually saw where he was buried right outside my window. I didn't even know that going there, and they put a stake through his heart. You could still see the metal pole going through the grave. But like all these little communities, they all have their stories. So
Well, no, just to let you know, I mean, we're not a cult. This isn't like some club where everybody's got to believe in the same thing. I think it's actually great that we could all uh, have our own personality and are doing our own research,
Yeah.
and that we could have these conversations to try to get down to the bottom of it, or at least the audience gets to hear two sides. Like you said, you've done shows with people that you don't agree with everything. I'm the same way. I mean, I've been on every type of show with all different types of characters. Um, because I'm confident in what I believe. I'm not just gonna, someone said something. Well, I have to believe it because Noel said it or Tony said this. So you know, and I hope the audience is the same way. And I think it's awesome. I don't think we have to all agree. It's not gonna make me mad at you. Oh, you don't believe in the flamenco books? You're a shill. I don't want to talk to you. Like that's not how it's gonna be, at least for someone like me. Um, and
Yeah, that's childish. That's childish business.
yeah, and the community doesn't need that. That's pride and ego. I'm all about being humble and wanting to hear other people's views because I just want to know the truth. Just like I assume everyone on this panel and everyone in the audience, we want to get to the truth. So we should allow people with different views to be able to talk and everybody have their own judgment from it and take what they can from it.
And I think that's
Appreciate
how
it,
we're gonna that's how we're gonna learn from each other too. By hearing something different. I know that sounds elementary, but it's true. We're not gonna know we're not gonna be able to know more unless we're open to actually receiving new information without a bias, thinking that we're right, even though we might not know that we're right at all, because the stuff that we're looking into is material that goes against the grain of, what's accepted as truth today. And that's one of the big things, Noel, I wanted to talk to you about is the concept of Israel.
Yeah.
During the 1,000-year reign, if we're, say, theoretically at the end, or it's over and we're in the little season,
Yeah.
what went on with this promised land that was that was promised to Abraham and his descendants, that are going to be, more numerous than the stars in the sky and the sand in the seashore? And you read the prophetic books, and it's pretty hard to argue that Israel is not completely restored for the millennial kingdom, including Ezekiel's temple, and like a restored land with numerous people. Like we're talking like the 12 tribes are coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Or the 10 are, you look in Second Esdras, and it speaks of that there's a lot of scripture that says that they go to the four corners. They're spread out all over they're dispersed, the scattered 10 tribes. Then it talks about in Second Esdras 13 that they decided for themselves to go to another land where nobody ever lived. And maybe there's an aspect of most of the 10 tribes went to that one place and wanted to keep the statutes. And at the end, they wind up coming back to that very land, Jerusalem. And there's a time period, and I would say it couldn't be any other time than the 1,000-year reign, that this land is restored. There's a king put over them. God is with them. No one ever bothers them again. And they have access to living water. So people are going to be living for a very long time. And if you're looking at like Ezekiel 37 and how it flows into 38 and 39, it talks about this bones army that is not resurrected, but raised up. And I think of Psalm 23, where David is speaking of walking as I walk through the valley. And that's all, it's the valley of the shadow of death. And it hit me, and I automatically thought about the valley of dry bones. And I think of a lot, and it speaks of the whole house of Israel is raised up in this bones army in 37. And I begin to think a lot about Armageddon and the kings, almost like the whole house. I mean, think of like Joshua and David being raised up at that moment, that bones army. And you have the 10 tribes almost like behind them, and they're being led back into this land called Israel that's been desolate for a long time. And then you have the 38-39 war, the kings meet, and it almost seems like a raised up Israel from the Old Testament people that are not saints. And I think of like the Lazarus and rich man story and if you think about Jesus, we think that Jesus, and if we think that's just a parable, I think it was really happening. There was a great chasm between the rich man and Lazarus. He was in Abraham's bosom.
And that connects with Enoch.
I'm sorry?
Oh, that connects with Enoch. But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
That when I think of God's character and what Jesus taught, forgiveness, to not realize that this rich man understood the errors of his ways, that so much that he was thinking of his brothers, tell them, please. Do we follow a God that would not forgive that guy?
Okay, so there was so much in there. I was taking notes. Is the ultimate question you want me to address the Lazarus parable?
Well,
or
that's
would
just
you
an
talk about-
aspect of it, that he was actually probably, I would think, the God that we follow, he would actually be part of that Bones army, because he understood that money mattered nothing the moment he died. And the moment he died, the one thing that he probably wanted, which would happen to me if I died before I got saved, because I didn't believe in anything. I was a totally agnostic, bordering on
Yeah.
atheist,
I
non-believer.
think I see. I think I see where you're going with this.
I'm sorry?
I think I see where you're going with this. Yeah.
That the one thing that I would want to do more than anything the moment I died was to be able to say, can I go back and go live a life knowing you're real? And could that Bones army actually be those people that were descendants of the 12 tribes?
Sure. So
Were
you're
very far from perfected.
maybe you're asking me like Revelation 20, reincarnation, something like that. So
Not even
there was-
reincarnation, but a second chance. They know, like Jesus showed the wounds, that they're gonna have, they, in order for them to get it right, they have to know who they were.
Yeah.
So it's not reincarnation, it's mercy.
Okay, so let me there was, oh man, there's so much in there. Okay, so let me say this. So I myself consider myself Israel. And Israel is a we can all argue whether it's just purely genetic or spiritual. I believe it is spiritual. I think it's genetic, but I think it's first and foremost spiritual. And everybody has to ask the question, when you go to New Jerusalem, assuming it is a brick and mortar destination, there are 12 gates, and these 12 gates have the names of the 12 tribes, and you are to go into your tribes. So everyone on this panel, which one are you going to enter? You going into Reuben, Naphtali? You going into Benjamin? Who are you going into, right? And the idea is that we are all Israel. We are all grafted in. We are the wild olive that is grafted into the olive tree. So going back to what I think of Israel is the physical land. Revelation ends. Okay, let me just go back first, because you had mentioned the Ezekiel's temple, and you call it the third temple. Which is interesting that we call it the third temple, because at that time there wasn't a second temple yet, right? So they're in captivity. Their temple has been burned down. Now they had the tabernacle for 400 years. Then they had the temple. The temple was destroyed. And Yahweh is offering them, saying, "Hey, I will build this for you. You be obedient to me. I will build this for you." It was conditional. There are many things he gives that are conditional, and they chose not to. They didn't want that. They actually went back and built a much smaller structure. So my position on Ezekiel's temple was that it was something that was offered in time, saying, if you follow me, I've got this great plan for you, and they didn't choose it. So I'm not expecting an Ezekiel's temple is actually huge. I mean, it's massive. It would be like engulf modern Jerusalem. It is huge.
And it's separate from New Jerusalem, because I actually found it's in different spots, and like Psalm speaks a lot about it, but it's almost like you have it's like a raised up house of Israel, not resurrected, raised up, including David. And the land of Israel is restored. And that's what I mean. Everything's perspective is, whose 1,000-year reign was it?
Yeah. So,
right. And who had the peace? And it's basically me coming to a situation that, from our perspective, we're actually the nations.
Yeah. So I was going to get to that there. So Yeah, so okay, and I could take this into the Gospel of Nicodemus too. So one of the Revelation, the reason I want to start talking about the temple, as you had mentioned, is that Israel, or I should say Judah, because Israel was divorced at that time. They're gone. So it's basically just Judah and Benjamin and Levi were sticking around. There was three of the brothers that stuck around, and they chose not to go for Ezekiel's temple. They could have had it right then and there, I believe. They rejected that. And then Revelation ends on a really kind of sad note. I mean, the Bible begins with this promise of I'm going to bring you into this land and give you all these things, and they had 40 years to repent after they killed Messiah. They chose not to. I think that they could have repented in that time. I don't know
Yeah.
if it was preordained or what. We can get into that, but we know that they chose not to. And then in 66 to 78 the time period, we have the Perusia. He's seen coming in the clouds with the angels, and Jerusalem is destroyed. It's over at that time. And Revelation ends. The whore of Babylon is the Jews. All right, they are the whore of Babylon. It's not speaking of like Tim LaHaye sense of like Babylon being rebuilt under Saddam Hussein. And so it ends with it with being a wasteland. It's just a haunt of devils and unclean birds.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when we look at Millennial Kingdom and Tartaria research, we see these grand civilizations all over the world, and it's still a wasteland there. Yeah, they had little outposts. They had Jerusalem. They had a few little outposts, and there were people living there, but they weren't building the grand structures there. And I think it speaks to that. I think that the dream was dead. Now, we read in Hebrews where what Abraham, when he was seeking out the land, it gives a sense that he never really found it, even though he was living there. He was really looking for the promise of another land. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to get back into Israel and who Israel is in
And
a
he was
second.
speaking about it, a building not made by man's hands. And, the land of Israel that's restored for the 1,000-year reign it's actually going to it's going to have Mount Zion. And I think that overlooking all of restored Israel is the literal city that comes down, possibly during, and I think it just makes sense during the millennial kingdom. And this is in a land that we don't have access to. And it's supposed to broad. There's so many people because they're reproducing, because they're mortals. They're descendants of the 10 tribes and altogether the 12. And we might not even know what they look like. They got everyone fighting over who's, I wanted the Irish and the Germans to be Judah, and I get it. Black people want and I get it. Each race, it's reality.
Well,
maybe none of us are.
We see with the Union Jack, you see on the Union Jack, you see the cross of St. Andrew and the Tav, or the ensign of St. George.
Yep.
You see the line with the unicorn indicating that the line is Judah and that the unicorn is Ephraim, which is really important. And that is what we're grafted into through Ephraim. That's why I brought up that with New Jerusalem earlier. As Rob Skiba used to say back in the day, pick a stick, Judah or Ephraim. That's one of the two you want to be.
And that's what it talks about in Ezekiel is they become one again.
Right. So the prophecy, right. So the prophecy is that So the prophecy is that Ephraim and Judah will no longer vex each other. And this goes into research at Tia Taffy and the Stone of Scone, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I do think that there was a line of kings that I do not fall under the position that the royalty on this earth are bastard kings, or that they are serpent seed or anything like that. I think that they are the true lineage of Israel, and that there's a reason why the elites want to be like Marilyn Monroe, for example. She had 12 forefathers that were Magna Carta sureties, which is just incredible to think about, that she had 12.
Wow.
She was true royalty, right? So there's something about some of these people who are come onto the world stage, and they're chosen and selected based on their blood. And I think it actually ties more into Millennial Kingdom research than it does through, say, satanic research, like David Icke's kind of blue blood type of research. So what I was going to say is that, well, what was, okay, so I want to get back to what Abraham was seeking for. And when you look into medieval books, you look at the Quran, you look across the board. I could take you to even J.R. Tolkien or C.S. Lewis, and they were just basically building their cosmology off of the medieval worldview. Is
And
that they
you helped me
believe,
immensely with that. Looking that a lot of what you looked into the first two ages blew my mind. I just want to let you know that, and it opened up a lot for me. So
yeah, so they believe what they call the blessed land. It also knows that Elysian fields, or I call it the Hedon wilderness, but it's a huge chunk of land on this earth where is what's called terrestrial paradise. And like I said, this was just a common belief across, the world. All the different religions all talked about this. It all existed on the earth at that time. And so yeah, so you've seen my research on that, and I tie that in with the moon map, and we could see that on the moon map we can see our own realm, and this is the realm of where the sun and the moon go around, but we have this huge chunk of land over here that forms the crescent, and this is where you see in all the esoteric with the maps and such. And I've read more than one text, including one of what's considered one of the most important texts coming out of the Middle Ages is Pearl. That there's only one copy of Pearl that was ever found with
you
side
turned me
by
on to
side
that one too.
with
Beautiful.
Sir Gawain and the Green Light.
Yep.
And then you have there's been several now, including the Phoenix, which you want to go out to Exeter, just a few hours outside of London, and go check that place out. And that's where the Exeter book comes from. I spent about 3 weeks there investigating that place. I love that cathedral. And that's where the Exeter book comes from, where the famous poem of the Phoenix, and the idea that the Phoenix actually lives in terrestrial paradise, and of course comes around. According to that, the Phoenix only comes once every.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
According to that, the Phoenix, Clement talked about the Phoenix too, but the Phoenix only, they would all say the Phoenix came every 500 years. What's interesting about the Exeter book, and now it's changed to every 1,000 years. And it's telling you that I think that there was a shift where the Phoenix had to skip over 500 years because there wasn't going to be kind of an end to the world paradigm shift until the end of that, right?
Okay.
So that hopefully answers your question that I do believe New Jerusalem has come down. I go back and forth that, by the way, the New Jerusalem may not be a brick and mortar city, that we might literally be New Jerusalem. We actually might be the camp of the saints. I'm not an advocate that it's in the North Pole. That we are literally the camp of the saints that Satan is surrounding and trying to destroy at this time. That's of course a much more preterist position to take. It may be speaking of both. It may be speaking of physical and a esoteric, spiritual. But I tend to like more esoteric explanations. Just as a whole, I tend to gravitate toward. That doesn't mean I'm right. It just means I gravitate towards that explanation more. Hopefully I answered all your questions. I'm trying to go through everything. Oh yeah, Israel. So the thing is that, you talk about the return to the land. So this is what we call second Passover. I don't know if you guys know what that is. There's first Passover, and there's also requirements for second Passover. And it's also called the second Exodus. And so there are passages in the prophets where they say that when the second Passover Exodus happens, it's going to be so great and so amazing that it's going to dwarf the first Exodus account. So you guys all know what happened in the first Exodus, right? They put the blood over the door, lamb, Pharaoh's firstborn son dies, they cross the Red Sea, right? That was the first Exodus. So a lot of people in my camp, in the Torah camp, they're like, when is this second Exodus going to happen? What is it going to look like? I'm like, dude, guys, can you think of an event that happened in real time, in real history, that happened at Passover, that was so huge that people aren't even talking about the first one anymore? Just think. Oh, right, Messiah was crucified and he resurrected. And this is where the Gospel of Nicodemus comes into this. So this is the harrowing of hell. By the way, Mel Gibson is making this into a film right now, which will be kind of interesting to watch.
That's what I keep saying.
Yeah, he's saying it's going to be science fiction too, which I'm like, you do it, man. Whatever. At least it's gonna be like a horror film, Mel Gibson, right? Like Yahshua going in there and slaying demons and stuff. But he goes down there. And this also ties into, we could talk about why I think Satan is the one deceived. that he's not deceiving us, that he is actually deceived. When we talk about the season of deception, we put way too much credit on Satan. We give that guy way too much credit. That guy is a doofus. He is. I need to be more reverent. I shouldn't say that. He's actually. We let's not take pride out of the equation. Pride is a terrible blinder, right? And he is the most proud. A person who's proud is blinded. Okay, they don't know the truth. But here's the thing. So Joshua, he goes down to Sheol. He resurrects everyone, and it's the resurrection, guys. It says the resurrection, and they're taking up to paradise. They're taking to terrestrial paradise, and this is the second Exodus. It is the grand event when Israel was brought into the land. That's my position, and I have, I've done, like I said, a lot of textual work to back that up. And it's one of the things that I think mankind just generally knew. Like when I was going all through Europe, you see it everywhere in the cathedrals. They're all talking about the second Exodus. But now in modern evangelical society, we've kind of completely, that's like a Catholic doctrine. We don't really pay attention to that anymore. So hopefully that, I don't know if that made sense to you, Matt, but I tried to, as quickly as I could. People accuse me of not answering people's questions, but I was
think
trying.
it's,
No, you
no, I
guys are doing
appreciate
great.
it immensely, because that's exactly, I've been wanting to ask you a lot of questions for a long time. Yeah, and I think it was you who turned me, and I was raised Catholic. I am Catholic again. Based on the research I've done, I was saved in a very Protestant mindset. And I'm not 100% believing everything, because Catholicism, they're amillennial. They're amillennialists. They call it the church age. They say we're in the 1,000-year reign.
St. Augustine.
Church age is a metaphorical, thing. But
so
Let me jump in real
beyond.
quick. You guys have been going at it, doing
Sure.
great.
Yeah, guys,
And,
jump in, please.
Tony and Ricardo had to go. They didn't want to cut you guys off. And I got my Stiggy for about another half hour. So we probably got like a half hour left in the show. And I just wanted to real quick read in the chat. Matt, I seen a couple people saying that they agree they see Ezekiel the same way you're seeing it. And then someone asking Noel, to explain. You say that 500 AD, 532, whatever is the year where this event happened. But a lot of people uh, we like to point out that Jesus was talking to that generation, saying, "I'm going to come right back." So if you could explain to the audience how are you trying to say it was 500 years after Jesus, or was 500 the year that Jesus was living in? Try to explain this a little to me and the audience.
To the layman, yeah. Explain it to me.
I'd love to. So this is something that actually, this very question that thank you for bringing that up, Vinny, and I really appreciate it. That very question is what led me into this Millennial Kingdom research. So one of the things that I'm not a preterist at all. I agree with a lot of preterist points. And back in the day, several years ago, I'm getting into kind of preterism, looking and going like, man, the idea that all prophecy was fulfilled by 70 AD, this is really enticing. I totally see this about Joshua speaking to that generation. And I do, by the way, he is speaking to that generation. He is coming as a prophet, because if he wasn't speaking to that generation, then we have no prophet arriving to warn them that Jerusalem's about to be destroyed. So he's coming and doing this. But I had problems with the preterist viewpoint that they said that the millennial kingdom is just purely spiritual, like all millennialism, like the Catholic Church, as you say, Matt will teach. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't really see that. So let's back up a little bit. So several years ago, I'm doing some Bible studies on the Aramaic Targum. The Aramaic Targum is of course, the Aramaic tradition of the Old Testament, of the Torah. And for kicks and giggles, we decided, well, since we're doing a verse by verse, let's take the Hebrew Masoretic and then line it up with the Greek LXX. We didn't know what we would find. And we started finding that we were like, oh my goodness, because the Hebrew Masoretic, so if you guys don't know what that is, that's the modern Hebrew that is in all of our Bibles. All right. And it's only like 12, 13, 1400 years old. It's not that old. All right. We're finding that it's not lining up with the Greek LXX, which is 1,000 years older. By the time you get to Noah's flood, in the Greek LXX, Noah's flood is like several hundred years after the Hebrew Masoretic in our Bibles. So let's say, I don't have the math in front of me, but let's just say for sake of argument that it's about 1500 years after Adam in our Bibles. The Greek LXX will say like 2200. So now we're on the third day. Like if we're looking at day ages for every 1,000 years as a day, we're looking at Noah's flood on the third day now rather than the second, right? By the time you get to Abraham, it's like another 1,000 years. By the time you get all the way up to Joshua, we did the math on this. Joshua is appearing in the year 4000 according to our Bibles, but in the Greek LXX and the Latin, he's appearing in the year 5500. So 1,500 years further in history than what our own Bibles attest to. And I'm like, what in the world's going on with this? So at the same time, I'm reading extra biblical books like Adam and Eve, the Testament of Adam and Eve 1 and 2, and Gospel of Nicodemus, Barnabas, these kind of books. And they're all giving these prophecies. They're lining up with the Greek LXX and saying that Messiah would come in the year 5500, and that in the year 6000 would be the end of the world, in which the millennial kingdom would be ushered in, so on and so forth. So there'd be 500 years. And I'm like, well, originally I'm reading this and going, well, that's not correct because the millennial kingdom didn't happen, which made me sad because I'm like, I guess I have to throw out all these books because they have inaccurate information. They have prophecies that did not come true. So fast forward now, I got all this research behind me on the original first century Christians were using the Greek LXX. They weren't using our Hebrew Masoretic. Now, if they were using Hebrew, they weren't using what we have clearly because, and I can give all the reasons on that why. But and so I'm like, okay, so I was like, all right, so we can get into the Phoenix too, how the Phoenix made a sneak attack and appeared during the reign of Caesar Tiberius, wasn't supposed to. And we know that that's the resurrection account. Let's see, the oracles of the Sibylline oracles say that within 500 years after Messiah, the Phoenix will return and the millennial kingdom will be ushered in no uncertain terms, right? I'm reading all these texts and it's telling me this. And so I'm like, okay. And then I take Enoch's calendar, his 10-week calendar, and I line it over the Greek LXX, and it is a perfect fit. I'm like, huh, okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So then I'm like, well, here's the thing. I love the Middle Ages back in the day, back in college. People, when I was in college, like 25 years ago, people would ask me like, where do you want to go on vacation? I would be like the Byzantine Empire or something. People are like, what? Like that's dumb. I'm like, no, I want to go back to the Byzantine Empire, right? So the Middle Ages was from as you guys know, 500 to 1500. Okay, exact 1,000 years, which also matches the Byzantine Empire. But I was like, several years ago, I'm like, what if I take this 7,000-year timeline and I just fit it over? I'm like, oh. And it was a perfect fit. Perfect fit. All right. It was a perfect fit with Enoch's calendar. It was a perfect fit with the Greek LXX, all these books. And so the guys, this is the school of Tuck. This is what I do. I don't just, when I'm coming up with these, I'm not making crap up here. Okay. I'm just taking these books and be like, look, guys, all these books could be wrong. They could all be wrong. I'm not taking a calculator. I'm not a fancy mathematician. Anybody can do this. Anyone can do this. And it was a perfect fit. And then I started looking at like Camelot, right? And I saw like how the earliest mention of King Arthur is he died in 536. What happened in 536? 536 was a major fire event, reset heat index events. You know, the trees all the way in Mexico and California all attest to this, right? That the sun disappeared. You guys know this. You've done the research on this. You go up let's see. You go to also 537, I think, was the death of King Arthur. And then 541 is the plague of Justinian, in which like 6 months, the entire world population basically dies in just within like half a year. I mean, it is a massacre event. Interestingly enough, and by the way, guys, tree rings don't lie. You can count them back and we can go back to that exact year. All right.
There's a great documentary about that too, about the 536 AD event, and it covers the tree rings in that documentary, and it's phenomenal. And I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense with that. Yep.
So now what people are, and then of course you go from there and you go into the Millennial Kingdom, but so what people are trying to tell me is like, well, no, there's 700 years of added time, all this kind of stuff. Like, you know what? Here's the thing. When you go into Enoch's calendar, it specifically mentions the week after Messiah, after he ascends to heaven and the burning of the temple, there is a week of apostasy. All right. And this is what a lot of people don't want to hear. There was a week of apostasy before the millennial kingdom, and then the millennial kingdom happens, and then of course the watchers are released afterwards, and they're finally judged, and that's where we're at right now. And so that is in a nutshell. The Apocalypse of Abraham is another book. There's a lot of books I matched up with this, and they all connect. And that's where I get it from. So yeah, definitely Joshua fulfilled his promises as he said in 70 AD, 66 to 70 AD. We've all probably, I'm sure all of you, we've all been through that research. I actually have one book. What is it called? You guys are going to either love this or hate this. That when Joshua appeared over Jerusalem and was seen, he was seen with one other person next to him. Does anyone want to take a guess where I'm going with this? Anybody?
Mary, Virgin Mary?
No, not the Virgin Mary.
Mary Magdalene. Okay.
Mary Magdalene, side by side. Yep, that's where we get the two towers from in all these cathedrals. It's the two towers. She is the tower, the Migdal. She's the tower. This is where we get Rapunzel from. This is where we got all the princes in exile, all the fairy tales. They all come from this. And so
would you say, Noel, do you mind about just would you say if we're millennial kingdom people, and this is where it lines up with the Catholic Church, not just Mary Magdalene, but even more importantly, and this is what I try to like communicate to people when the Protestants get crazy over the Virgin Mary, is Jesus lived a life down here and had relationships, real relationships that he didn't forget. And what's more, when your mother's really good to you, what's a more important relationship? And I just try to reiterate to people, because I wound up arguing with my sister, who is Catholic, when I got saved in a Protestant mindset, that you're praying to me, you're doing all this stuff. And I admit that I was completely wrong, because if it's amillennial or we're post-millennial, like we believe, regardless of that, we should be taking the Virgin Mary extremely seriously and revering her a lot, especially if we're contemplating believing that we're in the post millennial season. That if people don't realize and think and understand that the Virgin Mary is in New Jerusalem in a very high position, I think they don't understand what's going on yet.
Matt, have you ever read the Infancy Gospel of James? You should. If you have, it's okay if you have.
I have. Is this where Gestas and Dismas are actually depicted as the robbers, and Dismas?
No, the infant. You should homework assignment, and this will help. I think help you with your point. The Infancy Gospel of James is now the historian scholars will place it 2nd century, which is a death sentence to any extra biblical book, right? Because people are like, oh, I don't have to read that. That's 2nd century, right? I don't pay a lot of attention to that. Nevertheless, even if it is 2nd century, it gives it's pre-Catholic, pre-Roman Catholic. It gives very good clarification to what you're saying, that the story that the Virgin Mary was, she remained a virgin her entire life, that Joseph was prior married, and that James was his older brother. James helped deliver Messiah. It's a phenomenal book. It actually has one of the first sci-fi effects in any ancient literature that I've read, where time itself stops when Messiah is born. And what people don't realize is that when they say the virgin birth, everyone needs to realize what they mean by that, because they should be saying virgin conception. Virgin birth implies that he, according to the Infancy Gospel of James, when Yahshua was born, he did not come through, the chute. he appeared as a spirit baby. He was in the womb. She didn't travail, and then he just came out and he appeared. And so they did a test on her and found like, oh wow, she's still a virgin after the birth, right? So my point is that yeah, so the Catholic Church, they get a lot of heat from that, where people are like, "That's doctrines of men. The Pope are making this up." And it's like, no, actually, I source this to my crowd. I say, no, actually, points to the popes on this. They're actually just getting it from this book, and it's happens to be one of my favorite books. So
And that's what I tell my sister all the time with these other books, like Joseph the Carpenter, the story of Joseph the Carpenter. You read that. A lot of it's about Mary and how
Yeah.
he was actually an old man, Joseph, and he was actually basically Mary's protector while she was in the temple because she was raised in the temple. And
Yeah.
her parents were Anne and Jehoiakim, who were basically not a repeat, but Joseph and Mary were a repeat of Anne and Jehoiakim, who also had angels and visit them, telling them that they were going to have Anne was going to have Mary.
Some people speculate that Joseph of Arimathea was actually Joachim, and I've looked at that a lot. I can't substantiate that. I'm not certain. Maybe that's neither here nor there. I will say this, and this is just my research and my opinion. This is no disrespect at all to you or the Catholic Church. And when I say cult, so Vinny, earlier you had said we're not a cult here, which I get that. I'm actually the worst cult leader on earth because if I were to like pass around the Kool-Aid, my wife would just hand it right back to me and tell me to drink it. My own people at Tuck, they disagree with a lot, probably most of the things I talk about. I think one of the things that they enjoy is that I'm kind of doing my own research and not paying attention to the standard the narrative. But all this to say is that my opinion, I'm just giving my opinion, is that what we call the cult of the Virgin Mary. So I'm not putting cult in a negative term because Christianity is denominations are cults, right? A cult is we have like think of Jim Jones, but a cult is not a negative thing in and of itself. But the cult of the Virgin Mary, I personally agree with the historians that it seemed to come into play more 13th, 14th century, what I would place at the end of the millennial kingdom. And for me, it was a simple transfer. It was transferring. You guys probably didn't think I was going here today. I didn't think I was either. But going from Mary to Mary, it was an easy fix. It was an easy transfer. That the earliest cathedrals like Notre Dame and others, they were actually dedicated to Our Lady was Mary Magdalene. And so I think that she held high reverence through the whole Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages, and then at some time there was a swap where they basically said we're no longer going to hold her in reverence anymore. We're going to move it to the mother. Now that's in no disrespect to the mother at all. I think that Mary, the mother, should be in the highest regards. Absolutely. The other point that and I'll just say this to the audience, and everyone could just roll their eyes and huff and puff at me. But the idea that Mary, the mother, is wisdom, the Catholic Church teaches that, and Orthodoxy does as well. I'll be bold enough to stand up against millions of people and say I disagree with that wisdom is actually the Holy Spirit. So wisdom is a lady. So but that I back that up with scripture, and that the thing is that some, or maybe I think it's the Orthodox Church, they might say wisdom is Jesus, but that's kind of weird because wisdom is feminine. So but anyways, yeah, so I know the Catholic Church, they will typically say wisdom is the Queen of Heaven, Mary, but that's just where I change opinions on that. But yeah,
real quick, I got to ask you your opinion. I had some researcher a while ago who it was hard to debate some of the things he was saying. I'm not saying I believe this before. I'm sure this is going to make people's eyes roll with me. No,
I do it all the
but
time.
I'm like you, where it's, just looking for the truth, doing my own research, not trying to make people happy. But is there any way that Mary Magdalene and Jesus were married? There's a lot of people who get into this and try to say that that was true. And could that be part of what you're saying, two pillars, and why there's so much of an importance with Mary? Just a question.
Vinny, are you when you ask that question, do you know who you're asking, right? Hey, it's me here. So my so
For the
my
audience.
oh, the audience, yeah. So the people know me as the Millennial Kingdom guy, or they know me as a lot of things, the Torah guy, whatever. For me, I would say my greatest research, my most impassioned research is Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene has been, I would say, in like my last year in Europe, the greatest moment for me was going to the Grotto of Mary Magdalene in Saint Baume, France. There's a saying that Yoda said in The Empire Strikes Back when he says that, you know, when you go in the cave, when Luke asked what would be in there, he says only what you take with you, right? That's a true lesson of Mary Magdalene. But yes, I do. I don't talk about her much because it's such an intimate issue for me that I don't want people trampling on this mystery of heaven. I don't think that this is for everybody. I think that if this upsets people, then they shouldn't look into it. They really shouldn't, because I would rather them not, you know, spit onto Yahshua's bride. But yeah, I do believe that they were married, and
Yeah, I gotta say, recently I've come to that mindset too. There seems to be a lot of evidence. I gotta give credit. It was David Voss. We were talking on a phone call and he was just hitting me with so much, talking about how in the Bible the wedding that the mom was at, and he's saying like the wedding was for Jesus and Mary, and was breaking it down. And you too, I, I'm actually in your camp now on that.
the Gospel of John. The it's written from the perspective of the disciple whom he loved. Some people will argue that it's Lazarus. They might be correct in that. But I think it is Mary. And of course, I've sourced numerous books that all come out and say that she is the disciple whom he loved. But it's the story of Gomer with Haggai, and the idea that at that time it was whoring Israel, and he was told to go marry. And I do believe that she did commit some sort of transgression. And all my investigate, I have my theories on it, but that she was a representative of what he came to restore, whoring Judah. And I do believe he did marry her. And you know, the tragedy is that, of course, you had the best man, John the Baptist. He's killed off. They have. I actually think on the night of the Nard incident is when they came together for the first time, and you can source that with Song of Solomon, which is the only other cross reference to the Nard incident. And then the tragedy, of course, is that he's coming in to be king, to be crowned king, and then of course he's killed off, and she's a widow. And she was friends with because well, through what was I going to say here? The Garden of Gethsemane is actually her father's property. So when Yahshua was going constantly to Simon the leper's property, to the house there in Bethany, the garden was his, and that was Mary Magdalene's. But that's a whole different. We can get into that, but I do feel that way, and I feel that can be seen all throughout the millennium. I was looking through it all through the architecture and stuff like that. I
Interesting, great work. There's people in the audience, obviously, that this is probably hard for them, and they're asking, can you give them scripture? Can you say, do you know off the top of your head like the best? Like I don't, I can't think of where it was where Jesus is talking about the wedding. And is there a scripture that you could give people to look into
sure.
this?
Yeah. So, okay. So, well, let me first say that you can go to my website, The Unexpected Cosmology. You can go to the archives. I've got tons of papers there. So, just so nobody thinks I'm trying to sell them on a book, all right? Yes, you can go buy the book, Mary Magdalene, Wife of Messiah. It's actually going to be a trilogy. I'm working on the second one, Princess in Exile, but and that's going to be more esoteric. But you can go on to the archives page. I probably got 12, 15 different papers, well-researched papers on Mary Magdalene, and they are alphabetical. So you just go down to Mary Magdalene, and there, you know, some of these could be 30, 40, 50 pages each, right, of research. So where I started my investigation was with the Nard incidents, and I first had to figure out, is this Mary of Bethany or Mary Magdalene? And you know, the Catholic Church gets this right, and this is Mary Magdalene. And she is um, doing something very, very sensual. I dare anybody who says that this is normal in the Middle East to go to, here in the West. Don't even try this in the Middle East because you'll get stoned to death for this. But go to your evangelical pastor today, ladies, and go like take your hair and just like anoint him like this and start brushing him and massaging him with your, just do it in front of the whole congregation. Let's see where that gets you. This was incredibly, incredibly sensual. You can't escape this, guys. And it was, you cross reference this. This is the great thing. This is the school of Tucker. We like to cross reference. It goes straight back to Solomon with his lover, with his entourage. She comes in and she, as she anoints him with the nard, Solomon, she says, "Tonight you will be laying between my breast." So this is and here you have Simon the leper. He's freaking out and he's going, if you were a prophet, you would not be letting her do this because she has no head covering, guys. She has been thrown out by her father. And so she is going to his feet just like Ruth does with Boaz. And remember, she sleeps at his feet, saying, "Will you be my protector?" She's going to her feet and saying, "Will you be my covering?" Right? Something has happened to her where she's been thrown out of the family. I think the wedding in Cana was the original. It wasn't like the initiation of the wedding in the sense of like they're going to go sleep with each other, but to be engaged in Hebrew culture was just as good as being married. And something happened that broke it off. And I get into that in all my research, what happened. But that's where I would tell everyone to, I give this all the time as challenge, like Revelation. Instead of going into the book of Revelation, just making crap up, just saying whatever you want, how about you cross-reference everything with the Torah? Like I challenge everyone, just cross-referencing with the Torah, and you might find that all the explanations, like the mark of the beast, it actually explains what it is in the Torah, guys. That's the challenge for everybody. If you guys don't want to take the mark, just read what it says the mark is in Torah. And it's not some future scientific thing that we have, the next thing Elon Musk comes out with that we all have to be careful of. It actually, it's something that every generation in the history of the world has all had to decide whether they take the mark of the beast or not. Every generation. So anyways, that's what I would say. Just source that with, that's where I start and then go read my research on it. And that's a whole show, guys. I don't really want to get off on that.
Yeah.
And
No,
if
I mean,
people,
no,
and this is,
you're
let me
doing
just say one
great,
more,
man.
Powerful, man.
let me say
Powerful.
one more thing because I'm not seeing any comments out there. If there's people upset about it, which is what happens, people get upset, they get triggered with this. I'm not attacking you. I'm not going to call you. Just say like, look, if this angers you, don't look into it. I would rather you not look into it. This is something that for me is really like, this is like, don't diss Yahshua's wife, dude. Like, don't do it. Just don't do it. Like, don't do it. This is, and this is, I have found that Yahuwah actually hides many things from us. It is, Proverbs 20:12. It is his right to conceal a matter and the honor of kings to search it out, right? And so he hides his mysteries from us, just like the millennial kingdom, other things like that. And it is the honor of kings to seek these out and search them out for yourself. And the reward is the discovery at the end. Anyways, so that is this is a good time, guys. I do want to say thank you, Vinny, for having me on. It was a pleasure meeting every single one of you and the others who left. I'd like to connect with them as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna do everything I can to keep us all friendly with each other, working, helping each other. I mean, to me, I had a great time. I knew it. I said it before that. I said Noel's going to be doing all the talking, and everybody's going to be going to Noel. You are the OG of this, Noel. You deserve your respect.
Yeah, man.
The people who don't know you, they need to know you, your work. Go to your channel. If you got a problem with anything he said, prove him wrong by going, looking at, and first you got to look at the work. You can't just because
yes.
you don't like what they're saying. You have to look into it and show him what he's wrong about. See if you could do that. So
By the way,
unexpected
Vinny,
cosmology. Yeah.
and by
Yeah,
and by
no.
the way, Vinny, nobody has proven me wrong more than myself. So I have nobody can do it. I have proven myself. I'm constantly to quote Chuck Missler, he says that he has been before he died, he said he has been wrong about the Bible many times,
Mm.
but every single time he recorrected his position, it was to take it more literally, right? And so there have been many
That
things.
means being genuine. That shows you're genuine. It's not the people that have the big ego, again, pride and ego, where you can't look bad, you can't be wrong, you're flawless. Us Christians know we're not flawless. We're very far from being perfect. So again, that's humble and to me that shows you the real deal. so we're gonna make mistakes, but at least we're looking, and by being like you are, we're gonna get to it. We're gonna keep finding more and more stuff and get better.
Can I address that point too, really
Sure.
quickly? So one of the things when I bring people on an interview, and one of them, the questions I love to ask is, what is truth? People will look at me like, what? Like, I asked
Well,
the
I
question
wanted
of
to
conscious.
ask you that myself. I wanted to ask you, how do you know you found the
Yeah.
truth?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, and this is one of the things I love about extra biblical books is how they create a greater peripheral vision. So for me, truth is like scripturally, if I'm going down a path that starts darkening my vision, then I know I'm going in the wrong direction. But if I'm embracing something that just expands and opens everything up, like this millennial kingdom thing, the millennial kingdom is one of those things where people who come into this are like, oh my goodness, that makes a lot of sense. Like that makes more sense than anything else, right? It's like that. It was like that with the flat Earth, things like that. I'll tell you guys about one thing that, for example, I used to go down the route that Israel is the wrong location. I actually started out back when that was still taboo to talk about. People forget that with me. But when that was like taboo and people are attacking me for that, I went down that route and then I disproved myself. I'm like, sorry, I can't just, And the other one was I used to be anti-Paul. I took Paul and I threw him out of the Bible. And there's a lot of people who do that. It's a growing movement. And that crowd hates me now. They hate me because I know all their secrets. Because I was
They
in their
get mad at
crowd.
me too. I've got into with
But
the anti-Paul
but
people.
but I wrestled with Paul so much, guys. Like wrestled, and it I'm at the point now where I'm like, dude, Paul, like the guy's freaking brilliant. Like that guy got it better than anybody. And just because he's used for a lot of propaganda doesn't that guy has been the Protestants destroyed Paul, in my opinion. The Protestants just ripped him a new hole. But basically, like I'll say this, like what the Jews did with Hitler. But the so yeah, so that's another position where I realized that I was completely wrong, and then I backed up because I started seeing that as I'm going down this path, everything is getting darker, and all these pieces, and I'm see what I'm saying? So that's how I determine truth, and it has to bring more clarity to me. Like the first time I read Enoch, I'm like, whoa, that brings a lot of clarity to Genesis 6, right? And you start from there. So
Now, how are you so sure then that you're not just sort of leaning towards what makes sense to your narrative, like that, for instance? How
that's
do you know?
that's amazing. That's an amazing question because I have, I used to be one of those guys. I don't know if anyone you first discovered me like 5, 6 years ago. I'm like, everything's a hoax, everything's a lie. It's all actors, all stage. And I actually disproved myself. I no longer feel that way. Now there's these kids coming along. They're trying to school me in this, and they're using my language. I'm like, okay, yeah, you read my paper from 7 years ago. I get it. But the thing is that like one of the things that started freaking me out is I think Jade Helm. People don't talk about Jade Helm anymore, but I remember the Las Vegas shooting. What was that? 2018, I think it was. And I started noticing in there that they had layers of, I first went to it from this perspective that nobody died, and now I do believe that people did die, but they had multiple layers in there of this psyop where I started noticing that people could take their own worldview and they could assemble the pieces and make it make sense. And that's how sophisticated everything is getting
Yeah.
now. And so people criticize me because like Charlie Kirk's assassination, they're like, no, he didn't die, or Trump, he didn't really get shot, this kind of stuff. And I've brought in people from all different angles and looking at this, and it gets freakier and freakier because I'm realizing that the world stage is constructed in a way you just take whatever research you want to fit your own worldview, and you think everyone else is an idiot. And it's becoming
Yeah,
really
and AI
hard.
will feed you what you want. AI will
Yeah,
feed that narrative.
Yep.
yeah. There's whole algorithms now
Yep.
that will keep you conservative or keep you liberal, and they will just feed you information for that. That's the way our whole world is constructed now. So yeah, that's a really good question. And where I go back to is this is why the school of Tuck is okay, like I'll give you a quick example, serpent seed. Some people really don't like serpent seed. But here's the conclusion. I can give you 30 different texts that will say quite literally that Cain was the literal son of Satan. All right. So at the end of the day, you can say, I don't like that and I don't believe that. And maybe it really didn't happen. Maybe he's not the literal son of Satan. But the conclusion is that there were all these ancients that believed it to be so, right? So that's all I can really do. I could show you Fourth Maccabees. I can show you all, I could show you the Aramaic Targum, all these different things. And they say Cain is literally the son of Satan. And so that's the way I construct my reality. I go to all these old texts. I say, okay, this is what it says. Can I back this up? Let's cross-reference, 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 cross-reference. That's how I came into the millennial kingdom, through that sort of process. And so that's how I define my truth. And it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the truth, but you can make cases that a large number of people across the centuries writing this scripture believed it to be so. So hopefully that makes sense to you.
No, I appreciate that answer, because it is obviously there's way more to it that you'd have to explain for people to even understand your type of research and how you would confirm things, and then they could be like, okay, that makes sense or not. So I get that it's a really sort of intricate question to even try and answer, but I like hopefully we could do this again, man, and maybe like Vinny, I always talk about like even getting to that point of like if we can ask some of these top researchers about how they get to that understanding of this is the truth. Why is it the truth for you? And then maybe more people can sort of get into their own research and make more sense to things. Because I think, like you mentioning, with timelines, people half the people say we're in this timeline, other people will say no, actually it's centuries ago or whatever, and everyone really believes what they're saying. So I think it's important for us to try and kind of pinpoint what truth is. Like, how can we make sure that what we're pushing out there to other people is actually something they should look into?
Well, like we said, it's having all types of views. Obviously we can't say we're looking for the truth if we only have one view and refuse to listen to another person's view. I hope that's where we're getting at with this. I know everybody's got to go. I know Diggy's got to go. I know Noel, you've been here longer than you thought. I just want to say thank you, Noel, so
Thanks
much.
for having me.
Thanks for everybody in the audience. And like Dee said, I would love to have hopefully get you to be on another show in the future.
I'd really like to get
There's just so much.
The discussion of research as well, because I think for a lot of people it is confusing when they have no idea of even how do you end up down this lane. You mentioned like you've got books on archive.org and things like that. I think is really important. So thank you very much for passing through.
Yeah, I have.
Also, Matt.
If people go to the
man, thanks for your input, man.
Thank you.
People go to the
Great to meet you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, go no.
Yeah, people go to the Unexpected Cosmology. I have all my research is free. You go on there. I have archives, just a bunch of papers on different subjects. You can go search, Mandela effect, everything you want, and I give all my research and reasons and all that kind of stuff. So thank you again. I hope to come on again. I really enjoyed myself. It was a pleasure meeting all of you.
Yeah,
thank you for everything, Noel.
The OG, Noel Hadley.
Yeah, man.
Everybody go check him out.
For real, boy.
He's got over 600 videos. He's been doing it for years. Go and check out his stuff.
Yeah,
please look at stuff before you right away say it can't be true. No, I don't believe it. At least go look into it first. It's the same thing I've always asked people about, like me with the flat earth model. Like, can you at least look at my stuff and then tell me what I'm wrong about? Don't just laugh at me because it's something different or you don't want to believe it. Yeah, thank you again, Noel. Great job. Amazing guy. You deserve your credit. And thank you again. Thank you, Matt, for coming on, and hopefully we can do this again.
Thank you for hosting and allowing us on, and my Stiggy is you as well. I've seen you a few times already on Vinny's shows, and I'm like, you asked like the best questions.
I appreciate it. I'm Aquarius, man, so I'm always thinking. I'm always like, hold on a minute, how that make sense? And try.
You're sitting there, and then you just boom. Yeah, it's good. Really
appreciate
good.
It, man.
That's why I love him. Love my Stiggy.
Love you too, bro. Let's do it again for sure, and let's give a shout out to Ricardo, aka Content for Faith, as well as Tony, which is Bridgewater Triangle Explorer, and of course Noel is Unexpected Cosmology. all the viewers, man, we appreciate you locking in, you know, giving us your input as well. Hopefully this can expand the mind of, you know, we were talking about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, bro. I was like, you know, but yeah, there's obviously something to it. Like I remember when I was about 8 years old, and there was you still get them now, but like these sort of magazines that would come on a Sunday with the big newspaper, and in that, you know, it would be like, oh, the snake children from Mexico, and I remember there were werewolf kids. There were like kids that were really furry, and so you know, it just made me think like, it's easy for people to go, oh, Sasquatch, you know. But yeah, man, appreciate you guys, man. Really, Vinny, as always, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Bro.
Appreciate you, brother. Very nice to
Yeah.
meet you.
Man.
Thank
Likewise.
you all.
Good to meet you too, man.
Thank you, Benny.
Yep.
All right,
God
bless.
bless
I'm
you
gonna
all.
end the chat
Signing
now.
off.
I'll talk
Yes,
to you
man.
soon, Noel. I'll hit you up.
Okay.
Peace. I'll
Thank
message
you.
you, Vinny. All right, peace.
No,
All right.
thank you again
Peace.
for everything you've done. You helped me in tremendous ways.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Beautiful, man.